"You don't look like a dangerous man tonight," Emma said, standing in the doorway with a mop in her hand, looking at one of the most feared men in New York City. "You look like someone who lost everything." Adrian Moretti stared at her. Nobody had spoken to him like that in 20 years. And that was the night everything changed for both of them. If this is your kind of story, subscribe to our channel and follow along until the very end. Drop a comment and tell us what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story has traveled. The building was almost empty at 1:17 in the morning. Emma Carter knew every sound Blackwood Tower made after midnight. She knew which elevator had the loose panel that rattled when it passed the 14th floor. She knew which hallway lights flickered before they died. She knew which offices smelled like expensive cologne, even when the men who wore it were long gone home to their families and their warm beds and their quiet lives. She knew all of this because she had spent 3 years learning it the way only invisible people do not, because anyone taught her, not because anyone cared enough to give her a tour, but because when you are the woman who empties the trash and scrubs the floors and wipes the fingerprints off the glass doors before sunrise, you learn by necessity. You observe. You memorize. You disappear. Emma Carter had become very good at disappearing. She was 26 years old, though most days she felt closer to 40. She had a business degree from a state university that she had paid for herself through a combination of scholarships, night shifts, and the kind of stubborn determination that has no glamorous name. Just the plain exhausting reality of waking up tired and doing it anyway. She had graduated 3 years ago with honors. She had sent out 47 job applications in the months that followed. She had received 4 interviews and 0 offers. So she cleaned offices. She cleaned them during the night because she spent her days working at a pharmacy, 2 subway stops from the apartment she shared with her father. A man named Robert Carter, who had once been a high school history teacher and who now spent most of his time in a rented hospital bed in the living room. His lungs doing work, they were no longer built for his medical bills, arriving with a reliability that his own body no longer had. Emma didn't talk about the bills. Not to her coworkers, not to her father, not to anyone. She kept a notebook in the bottom of her bag where she wrote the numbers down in careful columns. The total at the bottom of the right-hand column had a comma in it. She had stopped looking at that total the way she had once stopped looking at a bad tooth if she didn't press on it. Maybe she could pretend it wasn't there. Most nights, she finished her shift at Blackwood Tower by 1 in the morning and caught the last express train home. She would stand on the platform with her cleaning cart, still wearing her gray uniform, and she would look at the people around her, the bartenders and the night nurses and the delivery workers and the security guards, and she would think, we are the ones who keep the city running while everyone else sleeps. She just never said it out loud. That night, she had only 1 floor left to finish. The executive level. The top floor, which she had been instructed to clean last and to complete before 2 a.m. when the building's security rotation changed and a different guard came on who did not like cleaning staff to still be present. She knew the rules. She followed them. She pushed her cart into the elevator and pressed the button for the top floor. The doors opened, and that was where her ordinary night ended. The executive lounge was a long room with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the city, like a painting that nobody had painted Manhattan at night, all amber and silver and distance. She had cleaned this room dozens of times. She knew exactly how long it took her. 45 minutes if she worked steadily slightly less, if she hurried slightly more, if she let herself stop for a moment at those windows, which she sometimes did, when she was certain the room was empty, just to stand there and breathe and feel for 30 seconds, like someone who belonged in a space like this. She pushed her cart through the door. The room was not empty. She stopped. A man was sitting in one of the leather chairs near the window. His jacket was folded over the back of the chair. His sleeves were rolled up. There were 3 empty glasses on the table beside him, and one that was not empty, though it would be soon. He was staring at the window with the expression of a person who is not seeing what is in front of them, who is somewhere else entirely, somewhere darker and further away. Emma had encountered people in this building after hours before, usually executives working late, associates, finishing presentations, occasionally someone sleeping off a long day on a couch. They hoped the cleaning staff wouldn't mention to anyone. The protocol was simple. Acknowledge them, apologize for the interruption, offer to come back and leave. She opened her mouth. "Don't apologize," the man said without turning around. His voice was low and very controlled, the kind of voice that knew it didn't need volume to be heard. "You can clean. I'm not leaving." Emma closed her mouth again. She began at the far end of the room the way she always did, working methodically from right to left, emptying the small baskets, wiping the surfaces, moving quietly the way she had trained herself to move. She was good at this. She could make herself almost soundless. She had learned to become furniture. She worked for 15 minutes without either of them speaking. Then he said, "How long have you worked here?" She didn't look up from what she was doing. 3 years, sir." 3 years. He let the word sit. Then, "Do you know who I am?" Emma paused for just a moment. She had worked in this building for 3 years. She had cleaned this floor dozens of times. She had seen photographs in the lobby, names on plaques, faces in the business section of newspapers that had been left on tables. She had paid more attention than people usually credited her for, because invisible people always pay more attention than anyone realizes. "You're Mr. Moretti," she said. "You own this building." He finally turned to look at her. Adrian Moretti was 39 years old. He was the kind of man whose appearance told you almost nothing useful, which was probably intentional. He was neither loud nor ostentatious. He didn't wear his power the way some men wore expensive watches openly as a signal. He wore it the way a person wears a scar. It was simply part of him, present in the way he held himself, in the stillness that seemed built into his posture. Emma had seen his photograph. The photographs had not prepared her for the actual man, which was not because he was more physically intimidating than expected. It was because he looked in that moment profoundly and genuinely miserable. Not angry, not threatening, miserable. The way a person looks at 3 in the morning when they thought they were alone and forgot to put the mask back on. "Do I frighten you?" he asked. It was a strange question. It sounded like a test, but not the kind of test designed to produce a specific answer. It sounded like a real question, the kind a person asks when they want to know the truth and don't care whether it's convenient. Emma considered it honestly. "Not right now," she said. "Right now you look like someone who's had too much to drink and is sitting alone in the dark. That doesn't frighten me. That just seems sad." Something moved across his face. Not anger. Something different. Something she couldn't quite name. "Sit down," he said. Emma looked at him. "I still have work to do," she said carefully. "The work can wait. Sit down." She knew what the smart, professional, self-preserving thing to do was. She knew she should tell him respectfully that she needed to finish her shift, that she would leave him in peace, that she apologized for the interruption. She knew she should take her cart and go back to the elevator and not look back. She pulled out a chair from the nearest table and sat down. He looked at her for a long moment. "Why aren't you afraid of me?" he asked again. Quieter this time. Not a challenge. Something more honest. "Because I've spent 3 years cleaning rooms where powerful people make decisions," Emma said. "I've cleaned up after men who could buy and sell this city. And I've learned that power has a particular smell during business hours. You're not wearing it right now." She paused. "You're grieving." The word landed in the room like something dropped. Adrian Moretti set his glass down. Slowly. "My brother died 6 years ago tonight," he said. It sounded like words he had never said out loud before or hadn't said in a very long time. Like they had been inside him for so long they had changed texture. He was the only person who... He stopped. He picked up his glass again, looked at it, set it back down. He was the only one who didn't see what everyone else saw when they looked at me. Emma didn't say anything for a moment. "What did everyone else see?" she asked. "What I let them see." His jaw tightened slightly, then released. "Which was the point?" "And your brother?" He saw past it. The way he said it was not sentimental. It was exhausted. "He used to tell me I was smarter than I was letting on, that I was choosing to be what I was, that choices could change." a bitter half sound that wasn't quite a laugh. He died believing I was going to change. Are you? Emma asked. He looked at her. Nobody asked him direct questions. She had been in his presence for 25 minutes. She was a janitor. She was sitting in an executive chair in his private lounge and asking him if he was going to change his life. I haven't yet, he said. Is that what tonight is about? He was quiet for a long time. Tonight is about not being able to remember his voice anymore. He said it flatly, like a piece of factual information. It's been 6 years. I can still see his face clearly. But his voice, the exact sound of it, I can hear the shape of it, the rhythm, but not the actual... He stopped again. I find that unconscionable. Emma felt something tighten in her chest. She thought of her own father, of the way his voice had been changing over the past 2 years, becoming slower, requiring more breath, pausing in places it never used to pause. She thought of how she had started recording him talking small recordings on her phone, just him reading the news or commenting on a television program, because she had understood suddenly what it meant to lose a voice, what it meant to realize later that you hadn't paid close enough attention. My father is sick, she said quietly. I record him talking. He thinks I'm documenting his opinions about the evening news. A small, private smile crossed her face. But really, I'm keeping his voice. Adrian Moretti stared at her. The silence that followed was not an awkward one. It was the kind of silence that happens when something true has been said, and both people present need a moment to let it settle. That's... He cleared his throat, looked away, looked back. That's remarkably practical. I'm a remarkably practical person, Emma said. I have to be. He looked at her the way someone looks when they have been seen unexpectedly by someone they did not expect to have that ability. Tell me your name, he said. Emma Carter. Emma Carter, he repeated like he was storing it somewhere. How long have you been doing this job? Cleaning 3 years, but I have a business degree. She said it matter-of-factly without bitterness because she had made peace with the fact that the world didn't always meet you where your qualifications suggested it should. I keep applying for things. Something will open eventually. Why does it matter to you, the degree, the applications? Why not just... He gestured vaguely. Just clean offices forever. She raised an eyebrow. Because I'm good at more than cleaning. And because my father spent his life teaching other people's children about history and economics and the possibilities of the world they lived in, and I refuse to spend mine doing less than I'm capable of simply because the first 47 doors didn't open. Something shifted in the room. She didn't notice it immediately. She was still focused on the thought she'd been expressing. But later she would think back on this moment and understand that it was the exact moment something changed in the way Adrian Moretti was looking at her. Not as a curiosity, not as an intrusion, as a person. They talked for another hour. She wasn't sure afterward exactly how it happened. The conversation moved the way conversations do in the middle of the night when defenses are low and the usual architecture of roles and expectations has been temporarily dismantled by exhaustion and grief and too much whiskey and the particular vulnerability that comes with being truly alone and then suddenly not. He asked about her father. She told him more than she intended to. About the illness, about the apartment, about the medical bills she wrote in the column in the notebook she kept at the bottom of her bag. He asked about the business degree, about what she had wanted to do with it, about what kind of work she thought she was good at. She answered honestly, without performing humility, without inflating herself either. She told him what she was actually good at: analysis, finding patterns in information that other people had looked at and missed, making decisions under conditions that other people found paralyzing. He told her about his brother, about the kind of person he had been, not perfectly, not in long, beautiful sentences, but in the halting, specific way of someone accessing memories they guard carefully. He told her about a particular evening when his brother had taken him to a terrible dinner at a restaurant that served food neither of them liked, and they had sat there for 3 hours anyway and talked about everything and nothing. And he had driven home afterward thinking that was the closest thing he knew to happiness. At some point, the conversation became something Emma couldn't fully reconstruct later. She would remember the shape of it, the feeling of it, the strangeness of being fully present, fully herself in a room with a person who had no category for her and therefore no reason to diminish her, but not all the words. The hour became 2 hours. The city outside the windows shifted almost imperceptibly into the particular gray that precedes dawn. At some point, Emma realized she wasn't thinking clearly. She registered this the way you register an important fact when it's slightly too late to be useful. She had not eaten since noon. She had been on her feet since 4 in the afternoon. The whiskey she could not actually account for how much she had consumed because it had appeared in her glass in increments she had not tracked carefully. She was not a person who drank often. She was not a person whose body processed alcohol the way someone might if they did. The last clear thing she remembered was Adrian saying something about his brother, about a boat his brother had wanted to buy, about how he had never bought the boat because the boat would have been proof he was hoping for something, and hoping had always felt dangerous to him. And Emma saying, "The most dangerous thing in the world is wanting something you might not get. But that's just being alive." And then the room tilting gently, like something coming loose from its moorings. Emma Carter woke up the next morning and did not know where she was. She lay very still for a full 30 seconds, which is what she did in any situation that was unclear. She gathered information before moving. The ceiling above her was very high. The sheets around her were a quality of fabric she had never personally slept in before. There was light coming through curtains, which meant morning. There was the sound of a city that was awake but not yet fully running, which meant early morning. She was in a bedroom she did not recognize. She was still dressed. She sat up carefully. Her head ached. Her mouth was dry. She had the particular disorientation of someone who had fallen asleep in the wrong place, which she associated with having studied too late in the wrong chair and woken up with a sore neck, except this was significantly more extreme. On the nightstand, a glass of water, a small white tablet that she recognized as aspirin, and a folded piece of paper. She drank the water before she opened the paper. The handwriting was precise and careful. "Take whatever you need. Forget this night ever happened." There was an envelope beneath the paper. Emma opened it. She sat very still for a moment. Then she put most of it back. She sat with her hand on the envelope and thought with the particular clarity that a very bad headache sometimes produces, cutting through everything non-essential and leaving only the things that are actually true. She had done nothing wrong. She had been too trusting. She had made a poor decision about alcohol on an empty stomach. She was in the apartment of a man she did not know well, who had left her both the means to leave quickly and a sum of money that suggested he expected her to have needs he could satisfy by being generous. She thought about her father's hospital debt. She thought about the column of numbers in the notebook. She thought about what she needed and what she was willing to accept. She took enough to pay 1 month of her father's hospital bills. She left the rest. She left it in a neat pile on the nightstand next to the empty water glass. She left the folded note exactly where she had found it, because she did not want to take it with her, and she did not want to throw it away, and leaving it seemed like the most honest option. She found her cleaning cart precisely where she had left it the night before, in the hallway outside the elevator. Either no one had moved it or someone had returned it. She took it down to the service entrance the way she always did. She went home. She did not tell anyone. She folded the night up inside herself the way she folded other things she couldn't afford to put down anywhere permanent, and she put it away. She was certain she would never see Adrian Moretti again. She was wrong about that. 3 months later, a certified letter arrived at her apartment. It was from the administration office of the hospital that managed her father's care. It informed her that the outstanding balance on her father's account. The total, she had not been looking at the number with the comma. The figure she wrote at the bottom of the right-hand column and covered with her thumb when she opened the notebook had been paid in full by an anonymous donor. Emma sat at the kitchen table with the letter in her hands for a long time. Her father called from the living room. "Emma, what came in the mail?" "Nothing." "Dad," she said. "Just a statement." She folded the letter and put it in the drawer where she kept important papers. She thought about what it meant. She thought about whether to feel grateful or diminished or frightened or all three at once. She decided that what she felt was complicated, and that complicated was allowed, and that she would deal with the complication later. She also thought about the fact that someone had to have known to send that payment to that specific hospital for that specific account, which meant someone had looked into her life, which meant that for all the forgetting the note had requested, someone had not entirely forgotten. She filed that thought away. She went back to work. The next Monday she received a phone call about a job interview. Moretti Holdings was expanding its internal analysis division. They were looking for candidates with quantitative backgrounds and practical experience. A recruiter had found her resume through a professional database and thought she might be a strong fit. Would she be available for an interview on Thursday? Emma stared at the name on her phone screen. Moretti Holdings. She should have said no. She thought about the medical bills paid. She thought about the 47 applications, the 4 interviews, the 0 offers. She thought about her father's voice getting slower and quieter, and about how much longer she needed to be able to keep the heat on in their apartment, and the food in their refrigerator, and the prescriptions filled at the pharmacy counter. She said yes. She told herself she was saying yes because it was a job opportunity, and she needed a job opportunity, and not for any other reason. She told herself that Adrian Moretti ran a large company with many employees and many floors, and no particular reason to notice whether one new analyst was added to a division he likely had minimal daily contact with. She told herself she was being rational and pragmatic. She was mostly right. She prepared for the interview the way she prepared for everything, thoroughly, methodically, and without sentiment. She researched the company's holdings, analyzed their recent acquisitions, identified 3 areas where their current strategy appeared to contradict their stated financial objectives, and prepared concise observations on each. She pressed her second-hand suit and polished the shoes she had worn to every interview for 3 years and took the subway to the address on the letter. The lobby of Moretti Holdings was nothing like the lobby of Blackwood Tower, which had been designed to impress with scale. The lobby of Moretti Holdings was designed to communicate something colder precision. Everything was exactly where it was supposed to be. Nothing was decorative that did not also serve a purpose. Emma stood in the center of it and told herself she was fine. The receptionist asked for her name and directed her to sign in. She was signing her name on the tablet when she heard the elevator doors open. She looked up. Adrian Moretti stepped into the lobby. He was surrounded by 3 people who were talking to him simultaneously, all of them holding tablets or folders, all of them moving at a pace that made it clear his mornings operated at a specific velocity. He was listening to all 3 of them with the expression of a person who processes information efficiently and expects everyone around him to do the same. He had not looked up yet. Emma thought with great clarity, "I can leave right now." She thought this for exactly 4 seconds. Then his gaze, sweeping the lobby in that habitual way of people who are always assessing the room without appearing to do so, landed on her. He stopped. Not dramatically, just stopped. A full stop, the kind that made all 3 people talking to him stop as well and look around in confusion to see what had interrupted the forward motion. They looked at Emma. Then they looked at him. Then back at Emma. Emma looked at Adrian Moretti. He looked at her. Neither of them spoke. What passed between them in that moment was not a conversation. It was more like a mutual recognition of the fact that the past had returned, and that neither of them had made it return, and that they were both going to have to decide immediately what that meant. Emma made her decision. She turned back to the receptionist and finished signing her name. "Emma Carter," she said clearly. "I have a 10 o'clock interview with the analysis division." She could feel Adrian Moretti still looking at her. She didn't look back. She heard the 3 people around him resume their presentations, and the sound of his footsteps continuing across the lobby, and then the sound of a door opening and closing. She sat in the waiting area and kept her hands still in her lap and breathed evenly and told herself this was just a job interview. The interview went well. She knew it went well because the 2 people who interviewed her stopped performing the neutral, professional face that interviewers wear at the beginning and started actually listening, which was a different face entirely. She gave her observations about the company's strategy. They exchanged a glance after the second one, that she correctly read as surprise that she had identified something they themselves had recently been discussing. She answered every question directly and without qualification. At the end, the interviewer said they would be in touch within the week. They called the next morning. Emma Carter started at Moretti Holdings the following Monday. She spent her first 2 weeks doing exactly what she had been hired to do and nothing else. She came in early and left after everyone else had gone. She read every document she was given with the same attention she had given every problem in her life as something to be understood completely before acting on. She saw Adrian Moretti 3 times in those 2 weeks. Twice in the hallway, once in the elevator. Each time he acknowledged her with a precise professional nod of the kind a CEO gave to any employee whose name he might or might not know. Each time Emma returned the nod with equal precision. Each time they moved on. Neither of them acknowledged anything else. She thought this was working. Then the rumors started. They started the way rumors always start in offices, quietly at first, in the form of glances and pauses that were slightly too long. The whispers came later. Emma became aware of them the way she had become aware of many things in her life, not because anyone told her directly, but because she was observant, and because invisible people hear things that the visible ones don't realize have been said within earshot. There were 2 theories she gathered. The first was that she had been hired because she had something on the company and someone was trying to manage her quietly. The second was more direct in its assessment of her character, that she had traded something to get inside. Neither of these theories was correct. Both of them had originated, Emma would eventually discover, from Victoria Hale. Victoria Hale was 34 years old and had been Adrian Moretti's executive assistant for 4 years. She was extremely good at her job. She was also, Emma assessed after watching her for approximately 6 days, one of the most strategically precise people she had ever encountered in a professional context. Not in an admiring way, but in the way one might admire the engineering of something that causes harm. She was precise about it. She knew exactly what to say, and in what room, and to which person, to make the information land where she wanted it to land. The first time Victoria spoke to Emma directly, it was in the break room, and it was cordial. She introduced herself, expressed professional enthusiasm about Emma's role, asked a few questions about her background that managed to sound like interest while functioning as an audit. Emma answered everything honestly and without revealing that she understood exactly what was happening. The second time Victoria spoke to Emma directly, it was less cordial. They were alone in the corridor outside the executive conference room. Victoria had been coming out as Emma was going in. "I don't know what you think is happening," Victoria said quietly, pleasantly, in the tone of a person who has decided to skip several steps of a process she considers a waste of time. "But whatever it is, it isn't. I'm going into the conference room for the 11 o'clock strategy review," Emma said equally pleasantly. "Is there something I can help you with?" Something flickered in Victoria's eyes. Calculation. Recalibration. She wasn't used to people who didn't register the implication. "You should be careful about the impressions you create," she said. "People talk." "People do," Emma agreed. She walked past her into the conference room. That afternoon, a revised version of the rumor circulating about Emma arrived in a slightly more specific form, that she had been given access to documents she wasn't cleared for, and that questions were being raised about whether her hiring had followed proper process. None of this was true. But it didn't need to be true. It needed to be believed. Emma sat at her desk that evening after most of the office had emptied, and looked at her computer screen, and thought about what she was going to do about it. She thought about it the way she thought about problems at work, which was to say, practically, methodically, without the luxury of emotion. She was not going to leave. She had earned this position, and she was not going to leave it because someone had decided to make her presence uncomfortable. She was not going to confront Victoria directly, not because she was afraid of confrontation, but because confrontation was exactly what Victoria wanted. It would produce drama that would then be narrated in a specific way to a specific audience. She was going to do her job so well that the space for doubt collapsed. That was all. She was simply going to be so undeniably competent that the alternative narrative could not hold weight. She went home. She helped her father with dinner. She listened to him talk about the news program he had watched and thought privately that his voice sounded a little steadier than it had last week. She recorded it anyway. She went back to work the next day. She found a $4.7 million discrepancy in a subsidiary's quarterly report that 3 senior analysts had missed. She flagged it in a brief, clear memo addressed to the division head. The division head stared at the memo for 45 seconds. Then she called Emma into her office and asked her to walk her through it. Emma walked her through it. By the end of the week, the discrepancy had been traced to a systematic error in how data was being transferred between 2 reporting systems, an error that had been compounding for 18 months. The division head told the relevant department head. The department head told someone else. And somewhere up the chain of that information, Emma Carter's name was mentioned in a context that was no longer about rumors. 2 days later, Adrian Moretti's assistant, not Victoria, a different one, asked if Emma would be available for a brief meeting with Mr. Moretti at 4 o'clock. Emma sat in her chair and did not let her expression change. "Yes," she said, "I'll be available." She spent the intervening hours working. She did not rehearse. She did not plan. She was not going to walk into that meeting performing anything other than exactly who she was, because performing had never been a tool she trusted, and she wasn't going to start now. At 4 o'clock, she walked into Adrian Moretti's office. He was standing at the window with his back to the door, which was the posture of a person who uses the moment before a conversation begins to decide what it is going to be. He turned when she came in. The last time Emma had been in the same room as this man, she had been sitting in the gray light of early morning in his executive lounge with an aching head and a glass of water and a note that said, "Forget this night ever happened." She had told herself she had done exactly that. Looking at him now, she understood that what she had done was fold the memory up very carefully and put it somewhere she didn't open, which was not quite the same thing. He was looking at her with an expression she couldn't fully read. Something careful in it. Something that was working harder than it appeared to be. "Sit down, Ms. Carter," he said. She sat. "I've been told you identified a significant reporting error that our analysis team had been missing for over a year," he said. "Yes." "How long did it take you?" "About 2 hours." A pause. "Why 2 hours?" "I was also reviewing 4 other reports at the same time. If I had been focused on that one exclusively, probably 40 minutes. Something moved briefly across his face that was almost in the most restrained possible way impressed. "The person who made the error has been with this company for 8 years, he said. "He's very good at his job." "I know," Emma said. "He is." The error wasn't carelessness. It was a systems architecture problem that predated him. He was working with a process that had a flaw built into it. The flaw wasn't visible from inside the process. It was only visible from outside it. And you were outside it. "I'm new," she said simply. New people see things that people who've been inside something for years stop being able to see. That's not a criticism of them. That's just how familiarity works. He looked at her for a long moment. "Is there anything else you've noticed?" he asked. Emma thought about the question. She thought about what she had been observing for the past 2 weeks. About the patterns she had been turning over in her head on the subway home each evening. The things that didn't quite fit the small inconsistencies that she had flagged in her own private notebook as things to think more carefully about. She thought about whether to say any of it. "There are some things I've noticed that I'd want to spend more time with before I said them out loud," she said carefully. "Not because I'm unsure, but because I want to be able to say them with enough specificity to be useful rather than just concerning." He studied her. "Give me a timeline," he said. "A week," she said. "Maybe 10 days." "Fine." She stood. She was almost at the door when he said quietly, "Emma." She stopped. turned. He was looking at her steadily. "The hospital payment," he said. Not a question. She held his gaze. "I took what I needed," she said. "I left what I didn't." "I know," he said. "I'm telling you not to explain it. I'm telling you because I want you to know that I have never done that for anyone." Emma considered this. "I believe you," she said. "That doesn't mean I owe you anything for it." "No," he said. "It doesn't." She nodded once. "Good night, Mr. Moretti." She walked out. In the elevator going down, she let out a breath she had been holding since 4 o'clock. The city was moving past the lobby windows in its ordinary evening way, full of people going home to their lives, full of light and noise, and the particular energy of a place that never fully stops. Emma pushed through the door and stood on the sidewalk for a moment. She had 10 days. She intended to use every one of them, because what she had seen in those 2 weeks, what she had been turning over quietly in the private columns of her mind, was not just a discrepancy in a quarterly report. It was a shape, a pattern. Something moving beneath the surface of the company's numbers, the way a current moves beneath still water, invisible from above, present, and powerful, and going somewhere specific. She didn't know yet where it was going. But she was going to find out, and when she did, she understood with the clarity of someone who had learned early that the world does not protect people simply because they deserve protection that knowing would not be safe. She started walking toward the subway. She had a notebook to open. Emma spent 10 days in a state of controlled urgency that she kept entirely off her face. She arrived before 7 every morning. She stayed past 8 every evening. She ate lunch at her desk. She did the work she was assigned quickly and correctly, and without needing to be told twice about anything, which meant that within those 10 days, she had built a reputation in the analysis division as someone precise and self-sufficient, qualities that made people leave you alone, which was exactly what she needed. Because the real work was happening in the margins. She had a second notebook now. Not the one with the medical bills. Not the one she had kept through years of applications and rejections and careful financial accounting. This was a new one, small enough to fit in her jacket pocket, and in it, she had been building something that looked, when she spread the pages out flat on her kitchen table at night, like a map. Not a geographic map, a financial one. A map of where money went, and what it did when it got there, and more importantly, what happened to the record of it afterward. The pattern she had identified in her first 2 weeks had not resolved itself into something simple upon closer examination. It had become more complicated, which in her experience meant it was more real, because simple patterns were usually coincidental and complicated ones were usually designed. Someone inside Moretti Holdings was moving money, not obviously, not in the way that got caught quickly, in the way that required a long time of patient, careful misdirection. A little from this account routed through that subsidiary, reclassified here, written off there. The kind of movement that only became visible if you looked at all of it at the same time from a distance, rather than examining each piece in isolation the way the internal team was structured to do. Emma looked at all of it at the same time from a distance. She looked at it for 10 days. On the 11th day, she knew who was doing it. She sat with that knowledge for a full hour before she did anything else. She sat with it the way you sit with something that has weight, because acting too fast on something this heavy was how people got things wrong, and she could not afford to get this wrong. She needed to be certain. She needed to have thought through every alternative explanation and ruled each one out methodically. She needed to be able to stand in front of Adrian Moretti and explain what she had found in terms clear enough that he could not dismiss them and specific enough that he could act on them. She went through the alternatives one more time. She ruled them out one more time. Then she called the assistant's extension and asked if Mr. Moretti was available. He was not. He was in back-to-back meetings until 6. "I'll wait," Emma said. At 6:14 p.m., she walked into his office carrying her notebook and a printed summary she had written 3 times, until every word in it was exactly what she meant and nothing more. Adrian was at his desk. He looked like someone who had been in meetings since morning, which he had been and who was now operating on a combination of professionalism and sheer will. He looked up when she came in, and something in his expression shifted slightly, not relaxed, but adjusted the way a person adjusts when something they've been waiting for has arrived. "You said 10 days, he said. "It's been 11. "I wanted to be certain," Emma said. She sat down. She put the summary on the desk in front of him. "I need you to read this before I say anything. I need you to read it without reacting until you finish it. Can you do that?" He looked at her. "I've been managing my reactions since I was 14 years old," he said. "I know," she said. "Read it anyway." He read it. She watched his face the way she watched faces when she needed real information. Not the surface, which was controlled, but the small things beneath the surface that even the most disciplined person couldn't entirely suppress. The slight change in his breathing when he reached the 3rd page. The way his right hand, which had been resting relaxed on the desk, moved to a stillness that was different from relaxed. The kind of stillness that is the opposite of relaxed, that is stillness as effort. He finished. He set the summary down. He looked at her. "You're telling me that Marcus Webb has been systematically siphoning money from 5 different subsidiaries for approximately 3 years, he said. His voice was completely even. "You're telling me it totals conservatively between $14 and $18 million? "Yes." "Marcus Webb," he repeated. "Who has been with this company for 11 years? Who I promoted to CFO 8 months ago?" "Yes." "Who was in my office this morning for 2 hours discussing our next fiscal year?" "I know," Emma said. "I checked the calendar before I came in." A silence fell over the room that had a specific quality, not empty, but full of something Adrian was containing with considerable effort. "How confident are you?" he asked. "Certain," she said. "I've run it 6 different ways. Every path leads to the same destination. The transfers are structured to look like routine intercompany transactions, but the timing patterns don't align with any legitimate operational need, and when you cross-reference them with the external accounts, they ultimately flow through." She stopped. She looked at him directly. "Mr. Moretti, I'm not bringing you a theory. I'm bringing you a documented record." He looked at the summary again, then at her. "Why you?" he said. It wasn't a dismissal. It was a genuine question. 3 senior analysts reviewed these accounts in the last quarter. Our external audit firm reviewed them. Why did you see this, and they didn't? Emma thought about how to answer that honestly. "Because they were looking for what they expected to find," she said. "I didn't know what I was expected to find. And because—" she paused. "Because I've spent a lot of my life watching where things go after the people who control them stop paying attention. I've cleaned offices, Mr. Moretti. I know what people discard. I know what they think no one will look at twice. That's all I did. I looked at the things that were supposed to be too small and too boring to matter." He was quiet for a long time. "Who else have you told?" he said. "No one." "Why not?" "Because I didn't know who was involved beyond Webb, and until I did, I didn't know who to tell." He stood up from his desk. He walked to the window. He stood there with his back to her for long enough that Emma understood he was doing something she rarely saw from him, thinking without performing the act of thinking. Just actually working through something in real time, without the architecture of control that he usually maintained around everything. "There's someone else," he said without turning around. "Isn't there?" It wasn't a question. Emma had known this moment was coming. She had been the one who decided she was certain, which meant she had decided she was prepared to say all of it, not the manageable portion of it. "Yes," she said. "I believe Webb has had help. Someone with access to the system authorization codes that allow the kind of transfers he's been making. Someone who understood the audit protocols well enough to know exactly how to time things so they fell outside the review windows." Adrian turned from his window. "Tell me," he said. Emma told him. She watched his face while she did it. This time the control slipped. Not entirely. Not dramatically. But she saw it, the moment when the name she said landed, and something behind his eyes went through a process that she recognized, because she had seen it on her own face in mirrors during the worst moments of her life. The process of receiving information that reorganizes everything you thought you understood about a specific person, and the moment your mind tries to find an alternative and can't. He said nothing for 40 seconds. "Say it again," he said. Emma said it again. He sat back down. He picked up the summary she had printed. He looked at the last page, where the name appeared in the context of the evidence, and he read it in the particular way of someone who is looking for the error they can correct, so the conclusion doesn't have to be what the conclusion is. There was no error. "Get out," he said. Emma's heart clenched. "Mr. Moretti, go home," he said. He looked up at her, and she saw something in his face that she had only seen once before, on the night they had first met, when he had told her about his brother's voice fading from memory. The same thing that lived beneath all the control someone who had been managing loss for so long, he had built an entire self around the management of it, and who was now being handed more. "Take everything you documented. Take a copy of everything. Keep it somewhere I don't have access to." Emma stopped. "Why would I need to keep it somewhere you don't have access to?" He looked at her steadily. "Because I might want to make this go away in a way that isn't careful," he said. "And I need someone to have a reason to stop me." She held his gaze. She understood what he was saying, and she understood what it cost him to say it. And she understood that he was doing the thing that she had not expected him to be capable of, which was to recognize his own worst instinct and ask someone else to be a safeguard against it. She picked up her notebook. "I'll have a second copy made tonight," she said. "I'll store it somewhere secure. You'll know I have it." He nodded. She left. She walked out of this building and into the evening, and she called a number she knew by heart, and when the voice answered, she said, "Dad, are you awake? I need to hear your voice for a minute." Her father said, "Emma, what's wrong?" "Nothing," she said. "Nothing's wrong? Just tell me something. Tell me about the first day of school. Tell me about the year you started teaching." There was a pause, and then her father began talking slowly with the particular warmth of someone who loves a specific memory, and Emma walked toward the subway and listened, and let the sound of his voice do what it always did, which was remind her of the thing she was doing all of this for, and why it was worth the weight of it. She had no way of knowing walking down into the subway that by morning, the entire situation would have changed. She had no way of knowing that Victoria Hale had been in the building when Emma walked into Adrian's office that evening. That Victoria, whose access to Adrian's schedule was comprehensive, and whose awareness of unusual patterns in his day was finely tuned, had noticed the visit. That Victoria had spent the subsequent 2 hours making a phone call that Emma would not learn about for another 10 days. The office felt different the next morning. Emma noticed it the way she noticed things, not in any single obvious change, but in a collection of small signals that assembled together meant something. The way 2 of her colleagues paused their conversation when she walked past. The way the division head's assistant looked at her and then looked away too quickly. The way her computer took slightly longer to load than usual, which might mean nothing, and which she filed away as potentially meaning something. She did her work. She was careful. She spoke to no one about what she had given Adrian the night before. At 11 o'clock, Victoria Hale walked into the analysis division. This was not normal. Victoria worked 3 floors up. She came down to the analysis division approximately never, or if she did, Emma hadn't witnessed it. She came in with the particular air of someone executing a plan, which is different from the air of someone simply going somewhere, and she stopped at Emma's desk. "Can I have a word?" she said pleasantly. The pleasantness was exactly as warm as a closed door. Emma saved her work. She stood. She followed Victoria into the small conference room off the main floor. Victoria closed the door. She turned to Emma with the kind of smile that is not a smile. "I want to give you some advice," she said, as one professional woman to another. "I'm listening," Emma said. "You've had a remarkable first 2 weeks," Victoria said. "You found an error that no one else caught. You had a meeting with the CEO on your 11th day. People are paying attention to you." She paused. "That's a dangerous position to be in." Is it? Emma said. Some people, Victoria said, would interpret your access to Mr. Moretti as personal, based on a relationship that predates your employment here. Emma felt the air in the room change. Not for her, for Victoria. Because Emma had been doing this managing conversations where someone thought they had the advantage for long enough to know exactly what was happening, and she was not going to give Victoria the reaction she had come to collect. I see, Emma said evenly. And what would you recommend I do about that interpretation? Victoria's eyes were steady, watching for the flinch. I would recommend being very careful about which files you access and which rooms you enter and which conversations you have, particularly conversations about things that don't fall within your official scope. The word things landed with deliberate weight. Emma looked at her. Thank you for the advice, she said. Is there anything else? A beat. You should know, Victoria said, dropping the pleasantness entirely now, that this company has a very efficient way of handling people who create problems. You came from nowhere. Going back to nowhere is always an option for someone in your position. You came here to threaten me, Emma said. I came here to advise you. No, Emma said. You came here because you're afraid. I don't know yet exactly what you're afraid of losing, but you came here because you think I'm a threat to it. She kept her voice entirely calm. I want you to hear me very clearly. I am here to do my job. I am going to continue doing my job. And whatever you believe about my relationship with Mr. Moretti, or my motivations, or my origins, none of it changes what I found or what I'm going to do about it. Victoria stared at her. For the first time since Emma had met her, Victoria Hale looked uncertain. You have no idea what you've walked into, Victoria said. Tell me, Emma said. Victoria said nothing. Then we're done, Emma said. She walked to the door. She stopped with her hand on the handle and turned back. One more thing. The people you're protecting, or the person whatever it is that brought you down here this morning, they're going to be very uncomfortable in the near future. You should think carefully about whether you want to be standing next to them when that happens. She opened the door and walked out. Her heart was going fast. She kept her pace steady and her shoulders back, and she went back to her desk and sat down and opened her files and continued working. What she was thinking underneath all of it was, Victoria knows. Victoria knows what Emma found, which means someone told Victoria, which means Marcus Webb knew by last night that Emma had gone to Adrian, which meant either Adrian had told someone which she didn't believe, or the office had ears that she hadn't fully mapped yet. She spent the next 3 hours working with extreme focus, doing her assigned work, and doing it correctly while keeping another process running simultaneously in the back of her mind, threat assessment. Who knew what? What they could do with it? How fast things were likely to move? She was on the third and most important question, how fast things were likely to move, when the answer presented itself. Her phone lit up with a text from a number she didn't recognize. It said, "You need to stop looking. Leave the company. This is not a warning that will be repeated." Emma stared at the screen. She took a screenshot. She texted Adrian's direct number, the one he had given her at the end of their previous conversation, for the purpose of direct contact if anything urgent arose, and she sent him the screenshot with a single line. This just came in. His reply came back in 4 minutes. Come upstairs, now. She gathered her notebook and her phone and her composure, and walked to the elevator. Adrian was not alone when she arrived. There were 2 men in his office she hadn't seen before. Neither of them carried themselves like company employees, and neither of them was there as a guest. They were there as professionals of a different kind. She assessed the kind who stand, rather than sit, who take up a specific amount of space in a room, and are aware of the door at all times. One of them looked at Emma when she entered. The other one looked at Adrian. "Ms. Carter," Adrian said. His voice was the version of controlled that meant the situation was serious. "This is Daniel Reese. He handles security matters for this company. I've asked him to review what you've found and to address what happened with your phone." The man who had looked at Emma nodded once. May I see your phone? She handed it over. He looked at the message, looked at the number it came from, pulled out his own phone, and made a note. We can trace this, he said to Adrian. Do it, Adrian said. Emma stood in the center of the room and thought this escalated. In the space of 20 hours, it escalated from financial documents to a direct threat on her phone. Sit down, Emma, Adrian said. Not formally, just directly. She sat. I need to ask you something, and I need an honest answer. I've only given you honest answers, she said. I know. He looked at her steadily. Is there anything else you found that you haven't told me? Anything you held back because you weren't certain or because you were still working through it? She thought about the third notebook she had at home, the one where she had been tracking not just the financial pattern, but the behavioral pattern around it, who accessed which systems when and in what sequence. The map she had been building of not just the money, but the people. Yes, she said. Something moved in the room. Reese and the other man looked at each other. Adrian kept his eyes on her. Tell me, he said. The money web move didn't just go out, she said. Some of it came back. Not a lot. Not enough to be obvious. But if you look at the investment returns from one of the shell companies, the one registered in Delaware that shows up in the subsidiary accounts as a consultant fee, she stopped, organized her thoughts. Some of that money came back into this company in a different form. It was used to purchase quietly a significant minority stake in a competitor. The silence in the room became a different kind of silence. Which competitor? Adrian said. She told him. Adrian sat completely still for a full 10 seconds. Then he said very quietly, That's the company that has been making underbid offers on 3 of our major contracts this year. We couldn't understand how they were structuring those bids. They shouldn't have had the capital. They didn't, Emma said. Not their own, yours. She watched him understand it. Not just the financial mechanics, he had understood those before she finished the sentence. She watched him understand the full shape of it, that someone inside his organization had not just stolen from him, but had weaponized that theft. Had turned his own money into the instrument being used to erode his company's market position. How long? He said. The competitor purchases started about 20 months ago. The underbidding began roughly a year ago. He stood up. He walked to the window again. She had noticed this about him. The window was where he went when he was processing something large. She didn't think he was aware of doing it. Marcus Webb has been a trusted part of this organization for 11 years, he said. Not to the room, almost to himself. He sat across from me this morning and looked me in the eye and discussed expansion strategies for the next 18 months. I know, Emma said, the level of performance that takes... He stopped. It takes someone who doesn't feel what you expect people to feel, Emma said. Not someone without intelligence, someone with a different relationship to other people. He turned to look at her. You've seen that before, he said. She thought about the years, the jobs that had gone to other people, the doors that had opened for others and closed for her. The moments when she had watched someone take credit for something she had done and smile at her while doing it. Yes, she said simply. Reese cleared his throat. Mr. Moretti, if what Miss Carter has documented is accurate... It's accurate, Adrian said. He hadn't taken his eyes off Emma when he said it. Then we need to move quickly and we need to move carefully. If Webb is aware that the irregularities have been identified, he may begin covering his tracks. Or worse, he may accelerate whatever the end goal of this is. What is the end goal? Emma asked. Reese looked at Adrian, a look that communicated something. That's the question, Adrian said. 14 to 18 million doesn't explain the level of exposure this involved. The risk Webb took is disproportionate to the reward if the reward is just money. It always is, Emma said. When the money is disproportionate to the risk, money is never the real goal. Both men looked at her. Then what is? Reese asked. Emma thought about the pattern she had been studying for 11 days. About the way it was structured, the specific companies it targeted, the timing of when the money moved and when it came back, and in what form. About what the end state of that pattern looked like if you extrapolated it forward another 12 months. Control, she said. He's not stealing from the company. He's trying to buy a piece of the company's future out from under it. The competitor's stake is just the first position. If those contract bids continue to succeed, if Moretti Holdings loses the next 3 major contracts to a competitor that is secretly funded by Moretti money, the company's valuation drops enough that someone can make a move on it, Webb included. The room absorbed this. Then Adrian said something she hadn't expected. He said, "How long before he knows we know?" "If Victoria Hale is connected to him," Emma said, "which I believe she is, he may already." Adrian looked at Reese. Reese said, "We need to lock his system access in the next 2 hours." "Do it," Adrian said. "But not yet. I want 20 minutes. Adrian, 20 minutes, he said. Reese nodded. He and the other man left the room. Emma and Adrian were alone. She looked at him and understood what the 20 minutes were for, and she wasn't sure she was prepared for it, but she had not come this far by waiting until she was prepared. "You want to be the one to tell him," she said. "I want to look at him," Adrian said. "I want to see his face when he knows I know." "That's personal." "Yes." He said it without apology. "And you think that's a good idea?" "No," he said. "But you said you'd keep a copy of everything somewhere I couldn't access it, and I'm still here making the same decision instead of the worse one. So I think that's about as much as I'm capable of right now." Emma felt something in her chest that she did not name, because naming it would require examining it, and she did not have time to examine it. "Okay," she said. "Come with me," he said. She stopped. "What?" "Come with me when I talk to him." Adrian. It was the first time she had used his name without the honorific, and they both heard it. "I need a witness," he said. His voice was quieter. "I need someone in that room who isn't on my payroll in the usual sense, and who has no reason to curate what they report afterward. I need someone I trust." She looked at him. "You trust me," she said. "Against all available evidence that trusting anyone is a good idea." He said, "Yes." She stood up. "If you go in there and lose control of the conversation, if this becomes something other than a professional confrontation, you'll stop me," he said. "I'll try," she said. "I'm not going to promise I can stop you. You outweigh me by about 70 pounds. Something crossed his face that was impossibly very briefly almost a smile. "I'll manage myself," he said. "You'd better." They walked out together. The walk to Marcus Webb's office took 4 minutes. Emma counted them. She used those 4 minutes to settle her own system. Steady breathing mind. Clear, attention fully forward. She had no role in what was about to happen, except to witness it and to intervene if it went somewhere it shouldn't go. She was there as a fact. She was going to act like one. Adrian knocked on Marcus Webb's door. "Come in." Marcus Webb was a heavy-set man in his early 50s, with the polished ease of someone who had spent decades learning how to be comfortable in expensive rooms. He was at his desk with his jacket on, which meant he was the kind of person who kept his jacket on even in his own private office, which told you something about performance, and something about insecurity, and something about how much of his professional persona was structural. He looked up when Adrian entered. His face showed the appropriate expression. Pleasant surprise, slight, deferential shift, the face of a person glad to see his boss. Then he saw Emma. The pleasant surprise didn't leave his face. But something happened underneath it. Something that lasted approximately 1 second, and then was covered over seamlessly by continued pleasant surprise. Emma saw it. Adrian saw it. "Marcus," Adrian said. He sat down in the chair across the desk in the way that meant this was not a courtesy call. "We need to talk about the subsidiary accounts." Marcus Webb's expression remained pleasant. Of course, he said. Which accounts specifically? I have the quarterly summaries, if you want. You know which accounts, Adrian said. A pause. Not a long one, just one beat too many. I'm not sure I follow, Marcus said. Emma watched him. She watched the particular quality of a skilled person performing confusion. The slight furrow of the brow, the hint of attentive concern, the readiness to help. He was very good. She had watched a lot of people perform things, and she knew the difference between a person who was confused and a person who was performing confusion, and what she was watching was the second thing. I'm going to give you an opportunity, Adrian said. His voice was completely level. Right now. I'm going to sit here for 5 minutes, and if you want to use them to tell me the truth about what you've been doing for the past 3 years, I will hear it. All of it. Marcus Webb's face didn't change. Adrian, he said with the tone of a trusted friend addressing a concern gently, I don't know what someone has told you, but... Stop, Adrian said. Webb stopped. Don't do that, Adrian said. Don't use my first name to soften it. Don't look at me like I'm someone who's been misled by a less reliable source. You sat in my office this morning and talked to me for 2 hours about the next 18 months of this company, and you knew, while we were sitting there, that there wouldn't be 18 months the way you had structured it. You knew. The room was very quiet. Emma watched Webb's face and saw the moment just a flash when the performance dropped. When what was underneath came through briefly, the way something surfaces in water and then goes back down. What she saw underneath was not remorse. It was calculation. Pure and cold and immediate. He was calculating his options. I want legal present, Webb said. Your legal team is being contacted, Adrian said. So is mine. So is a federal investigator, which is a courtesy I don't have to extend to you. I am extending it because 11 years means something to me, even when apparently it means nothing to you. Webb said nothing. Here's what's going to happen, Adrian said. You are going to provide full cooperation with the investigation that has already begun. Every account, every transfer, every name of every other person involved. And in exchange for that cooperation, I will not pursue this in every arena available to me. I will allow the legal process to function as it is designed to. And if I don't cooperate, Webb said, then every resource I have, Adrian said quietly, goes toward making sure that everything you've built and everyone you've protected and every exit you think you have gets examined in the most thorough possible way. Another silence. Then Webb looked at Emma. He looked at her with an expression she hadn't expected. Not anger, not contempt, fear. Who are you? He said, not rhetorically, with a specific urgency. Emma Carter, she said. I work in your analysis division. She's the one who found it, Adrian said. All of it. Webb stared at her. You've been here 11 days, he said. 12, Emma said. He kept looking at her with that expression. The fear and something underneath the fear that she took a moment to identify and then recognized as something almost like disbelief. She had worked in the invisible parts of institutions for long enough to know what it looked like when a powerful person encountered the realization that they had been undone by someone they had never thought to account for. Someone they had looked past. Someone they had considered beneath their notice. You should have taken the money, he said, not to Adrian, to her. Emma felt the words land. She understood what he meant. She understood that Webb at some point had been informed about the hospital payment, about who she was, about what her history with Adrian was, about the money she had taken, and the money she had left. And she understood that in his calculation, the version of her that took all the money was someone who could be dismissed or managed or even used. The version of her that left it was something he hadn't been prepared for. I took what I needed, she said. She had said these exact words before. They landed differently here. Webb leaned back in his chair. The calculation was still happening. She could see it running. He was not going to cooperate. Not yet. He needed to weigh his options and communicate with whoever else was involved. She thought about Victoria, about the size of what was actually in motion, and cooperation was a decision that would require him to believe he had no better alternative. That belief hadn't arrived yet, but it was coming. Adrian stood up. Your access to all systems has been suspended as of 3 minutes ago, he said. You won't be leaving the building until my security team has completed an initial documentation review. If you need anything, you can make that known. He walked toward the door. Emma followed. She was almost through the door when Webb spoke again. Moretti. The use of the last name, the full weight of it. You think you know what this is? You don't know what this is. Adrian paused with his hand on the door frame. He didn't turn around. You have 24 hours to decide if you're going to tell me, he said. He walked out. Emma walked out behind him. In the hallway with the door closed behind them and the length of the corridor between them and anyone else, Adrian stopped. He stood very still. Emma waited. He's right, he said finally. I don't know all of it yet. No, she agreed. But you know enough. He looked at her. Emma. Just her name. Said in a tone she hadn't heard from him before, not professional, not controlled, something raw underneath. How did you know to look? When you were going through those accounts on your 12th day here, what made you stop and see it instead of moving past it, the way everyone else did? She thought about it honestly. Because I've spent my life being the person that nobody looked at twice, she said. So I learned to look at the things nobody looks at twice. That's all it was. He looked at her for a moment. That was several things at once, and then he said, Go home. Get some rest. Tomorrow is going to be complicated. Tomorrow, Emma said, is already complicated. She turned and walked toward the elevator. She pressed the button and stood waiting, and felt the full weight of the day pressing on her, not breaking her, just present the way real things are present with density and consequence. She thought about Webb's face when he'd said, You should have taken the money. She thought about what was underneath his fear, and what that meant about what he knew about how this was going to go. She thought about what she didn't know yet, about what he had meant when he said, You don't know what this is. The elevator arrived. She stepped in. As the doors closed, she had the quiet, specific feeling of someone standing at the edge of something much larger than what they can currently see, not falling, not retreating, but recognizing the scale of what's ahead. She pressed the lobby button. She went home to her father's voice. And in the morning, everything got worse before it got better. The morning after Marcus Webb's access was suspended, Emma arrived at the office at 6:48 a.m. to find Daniel Reese already waiting at her desk. He was not sitting. People like Reese didn't sit when they were waiting for someone. They stood in a way that communicated readiness, and the readiness itself communicated that whatever they needed to say was not something that could wait. Emma set her bag down. Tell me, she said. Webb had a meeting last night, Reese said. After we locked his access, and before we completed the documentation hold, he made 3 phone calls from a personal device. We have the numbers. 2 of them we've already traced. 1 of them we haven't. Victoria Hale, Emma said. Reese looked at her with the expression of someone recalibrating their estimate of a person. 1 of the 2 we traced, yes. The other was a law firm in Midtown that has a well-documented history of representing clients who need aggressive containment strategies. Emma sat down. Containment of what specifically? Of people, Reese said. Of witnesses. Of problems that have names and addresses. The word addresses landed in the room with specific weight. Emma heard it clearly. He knows where I live, she said. We don't know that yet, but we have to operate as though he does. I've spoken to Mr. Moretti this morning. He wants to move you to a company apartment until we've completed the initial legal filings. Once the federal documentation is formally submitted, your position changes. You become a protected witness, rather than an obstacle. I'm not leaving my father, Emma said immediately. Ms. Carter, my father is sick. He requires daily care. He cannot be left alone overnight, and he cannot be moved without significant medical coordination. Whatever arrangement you're proposing, it includes him, or it doesn't happen. Reese looked at her. Then he said, I'll make arrangements for both of you. Today, Emma said. By noon, he said. She nodded. She opened her computer. She began working. What she felt underneath the practical surface of her response was a specific kind of cold, that she had learned over the years was not fear in the paralytic sense, but fear in the clarifying sense. The kind that sharpens everything down to what actually matters and strips away everything that doesn't. She had felt it on the night she had opened her father's hospital bills and seen the full number for the first time. She had felt it the morning she had woken up in Adrian Moretti's penthouse and not known where she was. She felt it now. It did not slow her down. It never had. At 9:15, Adrian came into the analysis division himself, which was unusual enough that every person in the room tracked his path across the floor with their peripheral vision while pretending to continue working. He stopped at Emma's desk. "My office," he said quietly. "When you have a moment." "I have a moment now," she said. They walked up together in silence. The elevator was empty. Neither of them spoke during the ride-up, which was not awkward. It was the silence of two people who had enough to say that they were waiting for the right room to say it in. In his office, he closed the door. "Reese told you about the calls," he said. "Yes." "I want to hear from you directly what you want to do," he said. "Not what Reese recommended. Not what makes logistical sense. What do you want?" Emma looked at him. "I want this to be over quickly," she said. "Every day Webb has, before the formal filings are submitted, is a day he can work with whoever he's working with to construct a defense or destroy evidence, or move money we haven't traced yet. The longer this takes, the more of it disappears." "Agreed," Adrian said. "The federal contact Reese has been in communication with is ready to move. I've been holding off because I wanted to make sure our internal documentation was airtight before we involved external investigators. I need another 12 hours. "You have them," Emma said. "But Adrian—" She stopped, corrected herself. "Mr. Moretti?" "Don't do that," he said. She met his eyes. "Adrian," she said again, returning to it. "The third call Webb made, the one Reese hasn't traced yet, that's the one I'm concerned about." "Why?" "Because he called a law firm and he called Victoria. Both of those calls had a function we can identify legal protection and communication with his inside contact. The third call is the one that doesn't fit that pattern. It's the operational one." Adrian was quiet for a moment. "What does operational mean in this context?" he said. Emma looked at him steadily. "It means Webb has resources outside this company," she said. "Resources that don't show up in the financial records I've been examining because they predate this position and this scheme. The money he's moved through Moretti Holdings is not his first operation. It's too clean, too patient. This is someone who has done this before." She watched him receive this. "You think he's done this somewhere else?" Adrian said. "I think he built his career doing this somewhere else," Emma said. "Multiple somewheres. And I think the third call went to someone in that network who handles the kinds of problems that law firms can't solve." The room was very still. "How long have you known this?" Adrian said. "I suspected it for 4 days," she said. "I wasn't certain enough to say it. I'm still not certain. But certain enough in the current context outweighs waiting for certain enough in the usual sense. Why didn't you tell me 4 days ago?" She looked at him honestly. "Because 4 days ago you were still processing what you knew. I didn't want to add to it before you were ready to act on it." He looked at her for a long moment. "Don't do that again," he said. "Don't manage what I receive. Tell me everything when you know it." "All right," she said. "Then I'm telling you now that I'm not fully safe in this building." He went very still. "Reese has the exits covered, yes. But whoever Webb called isn't coming through the exits Reese is watching." She kept her voice level. "I'm not saying this to alarm you. I'm saying it because you asked me to tell you everything." Adrian looked at her with an expression she had not seen on his face before in a professional context. It was not the controlled assessment of a man processing risk. It was something more immediate, more personal. "You're not going to tell me you're fine," he said. "I'm not fine," she said. "I'm managing. Those are different things." He stood up from his desk. "I'm moving the timeline," he said. "We file today. Not in 12 hours. Today, Reese. He pressed his phone. Reese answered on the first ring. Change of schedule. Everything moves to today. Get the federal contact on the phone in the next 30 minutes. Emma, stay in this building until Reese has your father's arrangements confirmed. Reese said something Emma couldn't hear. Adrian said, I understand. Make it work. He put the phone down. He looked at Emma. Your father, he said. Tell me what he needs. Emma blinked. It was the question she had not expected anyone to ask. Not in the specific way he was asking it, not as logistical information to be sorted, but as something that mattered to him for reasons that had nothing to do with logistics. He needs his medication schedule maintained, she said. He needs his oxygen equipment. He needs someone he isn't afraid of because he doesn't do well with strangers. He needs... She stopped, took a breath. He needs me. You'll be with him, Adrian said. That's non-negotiable. She nodded. Something in her chest tightened and released simultaneously. Thank you. Don't thank me for that, he said. That's just what's right. For a moment the office held a specific quiet, not professional quiet, not strategic quiet. Something more human than either. Then Emma's phone rang. She looked at the screen. Unknown number. She looked at Adrian. He nodded. She answered. She put it on speaker. A voice said, Ms. Carter, I think we should talk before things get further out of hand. The voice was calm, male, educated in the particular way that suggests expensive schooling as opposed to genuine knowledge. She didn't recognize it. I'm listening, she said. You've done impressive work, the voice said. That's not flattery. It's an accurate assessment. Finding what you found in 12 days is genuinely impressive. The problem is that you've now put yourself in the middle of something that was moving long before you arrived. Who are you? Emma said. Someone who's trying to give you an exit, the voice said. What you found, the financial records, the pattern, all of it, none of it has to become your problem permanently. You can walk away from this with your father's medical care funded for the next decade. A position in a company with no connection to this situation. A clean, comfortable life. All you need to do is let things proceed as they were proceeding before you started looking. Adrian's jaw tightened. He didn't speak. He kept his eyes on the phone. You want me to stop cooperating with the investigation, Emma said. I want you to make a rational decision, the voice said. You're 26 years old. You have a sick father. You work hard. You deserve better than what you've been handed. We can correct that. Mr. Moretti can't offer you what we can offer you, because what we can offer you comes without the risks his world carries. His world, Emma said. You know who he is, the voice said. Not just the CEO, all of it. You've known since the night you met him. Whatever he's told you since then, however he's framed himself in this situation, you understand that when this is over, whatever outcome favors him is the outcome that matters to him. You are useful to him right now. That's different from being safe with him. The silence stretched. Emma looked at Adrian. He was looking at her with an expression that was entirely unguarded in a way she had never seen from him before. Not performing control, not managing what she saw, just looking at her with something in his face that acknowledged that what the voice had said was not entirely a lie, and that he knew it, and that he was not going to pretend otherwise. That honesty in that moment said more than anything he could have spoken. Emma looked back at the phone. I appreciate the offer, she said. My answer is no. A pause. Ms. Carter. I've spent my life watching people make decisions based on what's being offered to them by someone who has decided what they should want, she said. I don't make decisions that way. I make them based on what's right, and right now what's right is finishing what I started. She ended the call. The room was very quiet. Adrian said, Reese heard that. He's already tracing it. Good, Emma said. Emma, I know what he said wasn't entirely wrong, she said before he could continue. I know that. I'm not naive about your world or about the fact that your interests and mine align right now in a way that might not hold indefinitely. And you chose to stay anyway, he said. I chose to do the right thing, she said. That's what I chose. You happen to benefit from it. That doesn't change what it is. He looked at her for a long moment. "I'm not going to let anything happen to you," he said. "I know," she said. "But for the record, that's not why I made that call." She stood up. "Now, what do you need from me in the next 4 hours?" They worked. For the next 3 hours, Emma sat in the conference room adjacent to Adrian's office and went through every document with Reese and the federal contact, a woman named Sandra Park, who arrived at 11 with 2 colleagues, and the particular efficiency of someone who had been waiting for this call and had her part of it prepared. Emma walked them through the full pattern, every transfer, every account, every shell company, every reclassification. She answered every question completely and in the plain, precise language she had used to document it initially. She did not embellish. She did not minimize. She gave them exactly what she had and told them clearly what she was certain about and what was still inference. Sandra Park asked sharper questions than anyone Emma had dealt with professionally. Emma answered each one with equal sharpness. After 40 minutes, Sandra looked at her colleague and said quietly, "She's solid." Emma heard it and kept her face neutral and filed it away. By 2 in the afternoon, the federal filing had been initiated. By 2:30, Marcus Webb's attorney had been notified. By 3, Emma had received confirmation from Reese that her father had been safely moved with his full medical equipment to a company property 2 miles from their apartment, with 2 people present who her father had been told were private health aides. Her father had, according to Reese, expressed strong opinions about the news program available on the television at the new location. Emma read the text report and felt the particular relief of someone who has been carrying something heavy and has just been allowed to set it down for a moment. She was still sitting in the conference room at 3:15 when Victoria Hale walked past the glass door, saw her, and stopped. They looked at each other through the glass. Emma didn't look away. Victoria did. She walked on. Emma watched her go and thought, she's calculating. She's been calculating since the moment this started, and she hasn't yet found the number she needs. When she finds it, she'll move. Emma needed to be somewhere safe when that happened. She sent Reese a message, Victoria Hale. "I need to know her current status." His reply came back in 6 minutes. "She's still in the building, not yet flagged for questioning. Adrian wants to handle that conversation himself." Emma considered this. She typed back, "Does Adrian know what I know about her access level?" A pause. "Then he knows she was in contact with Webb." "What else do you know?" Emma thought about the third notebook, about the behavioral pattern she had been mapping for 12 days alongside the financial pattern, about what she had noticed regarding the specific system authorizations that had allowed Webb's transfers to proceed without the usual internal flags triggering. She typed, "Victoria didn't just communicate with Webb. She cleared the path for him. The system authorizations that should have flagged his transfers were manually overridden on 7 occasions. The override logs show an access profile that doesn't match Webb's. They match a level of system access that executive assistants with certain clearances have." She pressed send. She waited. Her phone rang. It was Reese. "Can you document that?" he said. "I already have," she said. "It's in the same file set I provided this morning. Page 12. The override log excerpts are at the bottom." A silence. "I'm looking at it now," he said. She could hear him typing. "Emma, this is if this holds up." "It holds up," she said. "I've checked it 4 times." "This means Victoria Hale is not just a contact," he said. "This means she's a principal." "Yes," Emma said. "And she's still in the building." "Yes," Emma said. "That's why I texted you." Another silence. Then Reese said, with the focused economy of someone shifting into operational mode, "Stay where you are. Don't leave the conference room. I'm notifying Adrian." The call ended. Emma sat in the conference room. She was aware of the glass door. She was aware of the visibility. She thought about whether staying in a glass-walled room was actually the correct instruction, or whether it was an instruction designed for a situation that was about to change. She stood up. She moved to the inner corner of the room, away from the door, where she could see the hallway, but was less immediately visible from it. She stood there, and she breathed, and she thought. Webb had made 3 calls: law firm Victoria, and the unknown number that had called her this morning, the voice with the expensive education and the clean offer. That voice knew her name, knew her father's situation, knew enough to make the offer specific, rather than generic. Which meant the operational network was already active and already informed and had been moving since last night. The federal filing had been initiated 2 hours ago. Once that was formally in the system, the situation shifted legally. The people involved would know that. When they knew that the calculation changed, the offer she had already refused became unavailable, which meant the people making it moved to a different set of options. She needed to think about what those options were. She was in the middle of thinking about it when she heard a sound from the hallway that was wrong. Not loud, not dramatic, just wrong, the specific wrongness of a sound, in a place where it shouldn't be at a time when it didn't fit. A door, but not the conference room door. A door further down the hall opening with the particular care of someone who didn't want to make noise. Emma looked at the conference room door. She moved toward it. She put her hand on the handle and pulled it open and looked out. The hallway was empty. She stood in the doorway. Then Adrian's office door opened, and Adrian came through it at a pace she had not seen from him before. Not running, but close to it, the stride of someone for whom urgency has temporarily overridden composure. "Where is Reese?" he said. "He was going to notify you. He's not answering. His phone is going to voicemail." Adrian looked at her, and something in his face was different. The controlled surface was there, but what was underneath it was moving faster than usual, pushing against it. Victoria is not on her floor. She was seen leaving toward the service corridor 12 minutes ago. Emma felt the cold clarity return. "The filing," she said. "Went through 40 minutes ago," Adrian said. "Someone in the federal contacts office sent a standard confirmation notice to all parties listed in the initial documentation. Victoria Hale was listed as a named person of interest." "She was notified," Emma said. "The system told her." "Yes." Emma thought about this for exactly 3 seconds. "She's not running," she said. Adrian looked at her. "She's been in this company for 4 years," Emma said. "She has building access. She knows this building better than almost anyone. If she was running, she'd be gone. She's still here." She paused. "The documents, my documentation, the complete file, there's a copy in the system, and a copy I gave you, and a physical copy I secured off-site. But the working file's on my computer." Adrian was already moving. They went down the hallway at the same pace, not running, both of them thinking as they moved. Emma's mind was running the scenario and finding the answer she didn't want to find. Victoria wasn't running. Victoria was removing. She was using the 12 minutes she had before the building was fully locked down to access whatever she could access and eliminate whatever she could eliminate. They reached the analysis division door. Adrian pushed it open. The room was mostly empty. It was past 3:30, and a number of the analysts had left early in the general disruption of the day. But Emma's desk was at the far end, and at Emma's desk, Victoria Hale was sitting with her back to them, her hands moving on the keyboard with the deliberate speed of someone who knows exactly what they're deleting and is doing it as fast as they can. The room had 4 other people in it. They all stopped. Everyone stopped. Victoria did not stop. She heard the door. She heard the silence, and she kept typing, which told Emma something very specific. She had calculated that whatever she was doing was more valuable to complete than whatever confrontation stopping would avoid. She was buying seconds. "Victoria," Adrian said. She stopped. She sat for a moment with her hands still on the keyboard. Then she turned around. Her face was composed. It was the professional face she wore in every situation. The face that had been in place in every meeting, every corridor, every strategic moment Emma had witnessed her in. But it was working harder now. Emma could see the effort of it. "I was retrieving some files," Victoria said. "From Emma's desk," Adrian said. "From the shared drive," she said, "which I have access to." What you don't have access to, Emma said, stepping forward, is the authorization override logs that connect your system credentials to 7 suppressed transaction flags over the past 20 months, which are already with the federal investigators, which you cannot delete because they don't live on this network. Victoria looked at Emma. That controlled face held for another 2 seconds. Then something in it shifted. Not broke, not collapsed, but shifted. Like a structure settling. Like a person arriving somewhere they'd known they were heading and making the adjustment to being there. "You're very thorough," Victoria said. "I grew up careful," Emma said. Victoria stood up from the desk. She smoothed her jacket. She looked at Adrian with an expression that Emma couldn't entirely read. Not remorse, not defiance exactly. Something more complicated. Something that had a history in it. "I didn't start this to hurt you," Victoria said to Adrian. "I started it because Webb told me the company was already compromised, that there were other forces moving against it, that what he was doing was actually—" She stopped. She heard herself. She exhaled. "I believed him. For a long time I believed him. And by the time I understood what I had actually been part of, I was already in it." "You could have come to me," Adrian said. "Could I?" she said quietly. "Would that have been the same conversation if it had come from me?" The room held what she had said. Emma thought there's truth in that. Not enough truth to excuse it, but enough to be real. "There are people in the hallway," Adrian said, and Emma heard what it cost him to say it without anger. "You're going to go with them. You're going to cooperate completely." Victoria looked at Emma one more time. "I told you," she said quietly, "that you had no idea what you'd walked into." "You did," Emma said. "You were right, but I walked in anyway." 2 men appeared in the doorway. Reese, who had apparently found his phone, and one of the federal agents who had come with Sandra Park. Victoria looked at them. She picked up her bag from the floor beside the desk. She walked out. The room exhaled. The 4 remaining analysts looked at their screens, and then at each other, and then carefully back at their screens, performing the focus of people who understood that the correct professional behavior right now was to appear to not have witnessed what they had just witnessed. Adrian stood in the center of the room. Emma stood a few feet from him. "Is it done?" she asked. "The worst of it," he said. "The 3rd call," she said. "The voice that called me this morning. Reese has it," he said. "It traces to a holding company in Delaware. It'll take time to unravel, but it'll unravel." Emma nodded. She walked to her desk. She looked at the screen. Victoria had been in the middle of deleting a folder. The folder was still partially on screen, half deleted, frozen mid-action, when Victoria had been interrupted. Emma looked at the files inside. They were not her files. They were files Victoria had copied from somewhere else and placed on Emma's computer files that, if discovered in the ordinary course of an investigation rather than in this specific moment, would have suggested that Emma herself had been building a private record of unauthorized financial access. The kind of files that didn't exonerate the person on whose computer they were found. The kind that raised the specific question of why they were there at all. Emma looked at them. Then she looked at Adrian. "She wasn't just deleting," Emma said. "She was planting." He came around the desk. He looked at the screen. The stillness that came over him was a specific kind. Not the professional stillness, not even the grief-heavy stillness she had seen on the night they had first met. This was anger fully contained. Anger at temperature looking for the exact direction to go. "If Reese had come in 5 minutes later," Emma said. "He didn't," Adrian said. "But if he had, he didn't." His voice was absolutely flat. "Call Sandra Park. Show her this exactly as it is. Don't close it. Don't screenshot it. Get her in here to document it in place." Emma was already reaching for her phone. She called Sandra. Sandra arrived in 4 minutes with a camera and her own documentation team. She looked at the screen. She looked at Adrian. She looked at Emma. "How did you know to come to the desk before she finished?" Sandra asked. "Because she didn't run when she had the chance," Emma said. Running meant she was afraid. Staying meant she was still trying to accomplish something, and the only thing worth accomplishing at that point was changing the evidence. Sandra looked at her with the same expression Reese had used earlier, the recalibration expression. "You should have been a federal investigator," Sandra said. "I'm doing all right where I am," Emma said. The documentation took 40 minutes. During those 40 minutes, Emma stood to the side and answered questions when asked and was quiet when she wasn't. She was aware of Adrian in the room, moving with the controlled energy of a person managing something large and containing it with great effort. She was aware of how the day had accumulated, the morning warning, the phone call, the filing. Victoria at her desk, the planted files. She felt it all like weight. When Sandra and her team left, the room was fully empty except for Adrian and Emma. He was standing at the window. Again. The window he always went to. She sat down at her desk and looked at her hands for a moment. "Go home," he said. "My father is safe. I had Reese check in 20 minutes ago. Your father has expressed strong opinions about the dinner menu at the property and asked when you were arriving." Something in his voice shifted. "He sounds like someone worth getting home to." Emma felt something break open gently in her chest. "He is," she said. "Then go," Adrian said. I need the building to be quiet for a while." She stood. She picked up her bag. She walked toward the door. She stopped. "Adrian?" He turned from the window. "What Marcus Webb meant," she said. "When he said you don't know what this is, he wasn't talking about the financial scheme." Adrian waited. "He was talking about who ordered it," Emma said. "Webb is operational. He implements things. He's very good at it. But someone directed him. Someone decided Moretti Holdings was the target and Webb was the tool." She paused. "That person hasn't been found yet." The silence in the room became a different shape. "I know," Adrian said. "Do you know who it is?" she asked. He looked at her for a long moment. "I have a theory," he said. "I've had it for about 6 hours. I haven't told Reese or Sandra yet because I need to be certain." "How certain are you?" "Certain enough that it changes everything," he said. "Certain enough that when I tell you, you're going to understand why this isn't over." Emma held his gaze. "Tell me tomorrow," she said. "Tell me when I've slept and my father has complained about the breakfast menu at wherever you've put him, and I have enough margin to think straight." "Tomorrow," he agreed. She nodded. She walked out. In the elevator going down, she held the side rail and let herself feel briefly the full accumulated weight of the day. The phone calls, the threats, the planted files, the specific cold of knowing that someone had intended her to be made into a criminal by the end of the afternoon. She felt all of it for exactly the length of the elevator ride down. When the doors opened to the lobby, she put it away. She had her father's voice to listen to. She had a name to learn tomorrow. And she had the clear, steady certainty that whatever came next, however large it was, whoever was behind it, she was not going to be the person who looked away. She walked through the lobby and out into the evening, and the city moved around her the way it always did, indifferent, enormous, full of people going home. She went home too, but in the back of her mind, one thought sat quiet and unresolved, the way the most important thoughts always do before they become the next crisis. The person who had directed Webb was still free, still watching, and they knew exactly who Emma Carter was now. Emma slept 4 hours. She knew it was 4, because she looked at her phone when she lay down and looked at it again when she opened her eyes, and the number between those 2 moments was 4, which was less than she needed and more than she had expected to get. Her mind had been running the way it ran when something important was unresolved, not chaotically, but steadily, like an engine that won't fully disengage. She had lain in the dark of the room at the company property and listened to her father's breathing through the wall, the slow and slightly effortful rhythm of it, and she had let that sound be the thing that kept her anchored, while her mind worked through the question Adrian had left unanswered. Who directed Webb? She had her own theory by the time she fell asleep, She didn't want to have it. A theory like that about a person like that required a level of certainty she hadn't reached yet, and more than certainty, it required a reckoning with what it meant. Not just legally, not just operationally. What it meant for Adrian, what it meant for everything he had built, and the specific way he had built it, and who he had trusted while building it. She got up at 5:30. She made coffee in the small kitchen. She stood at the counter and drank it, and thought. At 6, her father appeared in the doorway in his robe, moving slowly, but moving under his own power, which was one of the metrics Emma tracked the way other people tracked weather, not because it told her everything, but because it told her enough. "You look like you didn't sleep," he said. "I slept," she said. "4 hours doesn't count," he said. She looked at him. "How do you know it was 4 hours?" "Because you have the 4-hour face," he said. He sat down at the small table. "The same face you had in college when you were studying for finals and also working double shifts and also pretending everything was fine." He folded his hands on the table. "Sit down, Emma." She sat. "Tell me what's happening," he said. She thought about how much to say. Her father was a former history teacher. He was not a person who needed to be protected from complexity. He was a person who had spent his career explaining the complexity of the world to young people who didn't yet understand it. His body was compromised. His mind was not. She told him enough. Not everything. Enough. He listened the way he always listened, completely, without interrupting, with the patience of someone who understood that the shape of a thing only becomes clear when you let the person telling it find the shape themselves. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. "This man," he said. "Adrian Moretti. What is he to you?" Emma wrapped both hands around her coffee mug. "He's my employer," she said. Her father looked at her with the expression he had always used when she said something that was technically true and substantively incomplete. "He's someone I trust," she said, which was closer. "Why?" her father asked. Not skeptically. Genuinely. Emma thought about it. "Because when I gave him information that was going to cost him something significant," she said, "his first question wasn't how to protect himself. It was how to make sure it was right. And his second question was about you." She paused. "People tell you who they are by what they ask about when they're afraid. He asked about you." Her father was quiet for a long moment. "Onge. Be careful," he said. "Not a warning about the danger. A different kind of careful. The kind a father says when he can see his daughter feeling something she hasn't named yet." "I know, Dad," she said. She kissed his forehead. She got dressed. She went to work. Adrian was already in his office when she arrived at 7:15. She knew he was there because his assistant, not Victoria, who had been escorted out the previous evening. A temporary one, a young man who looked like he had been called in on very short notice and was determined to be useful, told her Mr. Moretti had asked to be notified when she arrived. She went. He was at his desk. He had not been home. She could tell not from his appearance, which was composed, but from the specific quality of his alertness, the kind that comes from a night spent working rather than sleeping, which has a different texture than tiredness. He was holding a folder, and he set it down when she came in. "Close the door," he said. She closed it. She sat. "Tell me your theory first," he said. She looked at him. "You have one," he said. "You've had it since last night. I know because I've watched how you think. You organize before you speak, and you weren't ready to speak last night because you were still organizing. You've had the whole night." "So have you," she said. "Then we'll see if we arrived at the same place," he said. "You first." Emma set her bag down. She looked at him directly. "Richard Calloway," she said. The room went still. Adrian looked at her without speaking for a full 5 seconds. Then he said, "How?" Not a question. Something between a question and a statement. The particular word a person says when the answer they feared has arrived and they need a moment before they can fully receive it. "The competitor company that Webb used your money to take a stake in," Emma said. "Vertex Capital Partners. I spent the last 3 weeks looking at the financial architecture of the scheme, and I kept finding one thread I couldn't fully trace the originating instruction. Webb is operational, like I said. Someone told him where to move the money and what to build with it. Someone with a specific strategic objective. She paused. Vertex Capital Partners' founding board had 4 members. 3 of them are on record. The 4th is listed as a silent investor through a holding company that took me 6 days to fully trace. She kept her voice even. The holding company is owned by a trust. The trust was established in 2019 by a man named Edward Reyes, who is a financial manager with a 30-year relationship with one client. Richard Calloway, Adrian said. Yes, Emma said. Richard Calloway was 63 years old. He had been for the better part of 2 decades one of the most powerful figures in New York's private investment world, not through visibility, not through the kind of profile that appeared in newspapers, but through the kind of structural influence that operates beneath visibility. He had been, until 5 years ago, a senior partner in the firm that had first helped Adrian Moretti legitimize and formalize his business operations. He had been in the years during which Adrian's underground operations were transitioning into something with legal standing, the man who had navigated the financial architecture of that transition. He knew everything. He had been there for all of it. He had left the partnership 5 years ago under terms that were described publicly as retirement, and that Adrian had always believed were exactly that. He had believed this because Calloway had told him so directly, had looked him in the eye and said he was stepping away, and Adrian had believed him because Calloway was one of the handful of people in his life he had trusted without reservation. Emma watched Adrian receive all of this. She watched him move through it the way you move through something that is restructuring what you thought you understood about your own history. Not just the recent past, the larger past. The decisions made the trust extended, the years during which a man Adrian believed was an ally, had apparently been positioning himself for something else entirely. He knows everything about this company, Adrian said. His voice was completely controlled. The full structure, every subsidiary, every holding, He stopped. He was there when we built it. Which is why Webb's scheme was so clean, Emma said. Webb is good, but he didn't design that architecture himself. Someone who understood your system from the inside designed it. Someone who knew exactly where the blind spots were because he helped create them. Adrian stood up from his desk. He didn't go to the window this time. He walked to the far side of the room and stood with his back against the wall, which was something she had never seen him do, and she understood that the window was where he went to think, and the wall was where he went when thinking had become something else. 5 years, he said. He's been building this for 5 years. At least, Emma said. The holding company was established in 2019, but some of the relationship structures go back further. The competitor company Vertex has been in quiet operation for 7 years. The early years were legitimate. The pivot toward using your company's money to fund them happened 3 years ago, which aligns with when Webb was promoted to a position with sufficient access. Webb's promotion, Adrian said. Yes, Emma said. He looked at her. I promoted Webb, he said. Yes, Emma said. And Calloway recommended him. 3 months before he retired. The silence that followed had weight and temperature. Emma let it exist. She did not fill it. Some things required space to become real, and this was one of them. The specific and terrible moment when a person understands that they were not just betrayed, but that the betrayal was designed around their own judgment, their own choices, their own trust. That the instrument used against them was built from pieces of themselves. Emma, Adrian said. She waited. I trusted this man more than almost anyone, he said. He was not a friend exactly. I don't have friends in the usual sense, but he was someone He stopped. He was someone I was honest with, about what I was, about where I came from, about what I was trying to build. He paused. He was one of the people who told me it was possible to build something legitimate, something that could last. I know, she said. He used that, Adrian said. Yes. He sat across from me and told me I could be better than what I was, Adrian said. And the entire time he was, yes, Emma said, quietly. He did. Adrian looked at her with an expression she would carry with her for a long time after this day. Not anger, though. The anger was there underneath. Not grief, though that was there too. Something more precise than either the expression of a person who has just had a very specific and very important illusion removed. Not the comfortable illusion that the world is safe, which most people lose early. The more specific illusion that the people who helped you become something were helping you because they believed in you. Emma understood that expression. She had worn it herself at various points in her life. She understood what it cost to keep standing when you were wearing it. "What do you want to do?" she said. He looked at her for a long moment. "What I want to do," he said, "and what I'm going to do are different things." "Tell me both," she said. "What I want to do," he said, "is what I would have done 5 years ago, before any of this. You know what that would have been." "Yes," she said. "What I'm going to do," he said, "is call Sandra Park and give her everything, and let the process work the way it's designed to." Emma felt something in her chest that was relief, and something else she didn't name. "That's the right choice," she said. "I know it is," he said. "That doesn't make it easy." "No," she said. "It doesn't." He looked at her. "You're the reason I'm making it," he said. She held his gaze. "You're the reason you're making it. I'm just here. Emma." He said her name with a directness that made the room feel smaller. "You have been here fully present, completely honest, willing to tell me things I didn't want to hear since the first night I met you. You are not just here. You have been the clearest thing in a situation that has been almost entirely unclear. And I need you to understand that." She looked at him. "I understand it," she said carefully. "I also need you to understand that I am not going to be the reason you make the right choices. You have to be that reason for yourself. Otherwise, it doesn't hold." He was quiet. "That's a harder version of this," he said. "It's the only version that works," she said. He picked up his phone. He called Sandra Park. Sandra arrived at 8:15 with the same 2 colleagues and a 4th person Emma hadn't seen before, who was introduced as a specialist in financial crimes with particular experience in cases involving long-term strategic fraud at the corporate level. He shook Emma's hand and looked at her with the specific attention of someone who had been briefed. "You built the documentation on this?" he asked. "Yes," Emma said. "How long did it take you?" 3 weeks for the full picture. 11 days for enough of it to act on." He looked at Adrian. "She built in 3 weeks what our team has been trying to build for 8 months on a related case." Emma stopped. "Related case." He looked at her, then at Adrian, then back at her. "Richard Calloway," he said, "has been on a federal watch list for 14 months. We had the outline of a pattern. We didn't have the mechanism." He nodded at Emma. "You found the mechanism." The room absorbed this. Emma thought about 14 months. About 8 months of federal work. About the fact that the investigation she had stumbled into from the inside was the missing piece of something much larger that had been being assembled from the outside. "He's done this before," she said. 3 times that we can document," the specialist said. "Different companies, different tools, same architecture. He identifies a target, always a company in transition, always one with a complicated legal history that makes conventional whistleblowing difficult. He places an instrument inside it, and he builds a competing entity funded by the target's own resources. When the target is sufficiently weakened, he acquires it or brokers its acquisition at a fraction of its actual value. And this is the 4th, Emma said. "This was meant to be the 4th, he said. Adrian said nothing. He stood very still and listened, and Emma could see him building a new understanding in real time, not just of what had been done to his company, but of the context in which it had been done. The fact that he was not the first, that this man had practiced on others before turning the same mechanism toward him. "Where is Calloway now?" Adrian said. "As of this morning, he's at his residence in Connecticut," Sandra said. "We've had eyes on him since 6 a.m. We were waiting for the documentation to be solid enough to move." "Is it solid enough now?" Adrian said. Sandra looked at Emma. Emma said yes. Sandra said, "Then we move today." What happened next moved faster than Emma had expected, and in a different shape than she had imagined. She had imagined she realized this only in retrospect, something more dramatic. Something that looked like confrontation, like resolution, like the moment in a story where the antagonist is brought face to face with the full consequence of what they've done. What actually happened was paperwork and phone calls, and Sandra's team working through the morning with the efficient lack of drama of people executing a plan that was already fully formed. Adrian was present for the first 2 hours, and then was required to be in a separate room speaking with his own legal team, which was the practical reality of a situation. This complex that the resolution of it was not a single dramatic moment, but a series of parallel processes running simultaneously, each one unglamorous, each one necessary. Emma sat in the conference room with the specialist. His name was Tom Garrett, and walked him through the documentation one more time. She answered every question. She filled in every gap. She did this with the same focus she had applied to everything in the past 3 weeks, which was to say completely without reservation, without any of the self-protective hedging she might have used with someone she trusted less. At 11:30, Sandra came in. "Calloway has been taken into federal custody at his Connecticut residence," she said, "as of 45 minutes ago." Emma absorbed this. "He didn't run," she said. "No," Sandra said. According to the agents on scene when they arrived at the residence and identified themselves, he looked at them for a moment and then said, and I'm quoting directly, "I assume Emma Carter is responsible for this." The room went quiet. Tom Garrett looked at Emma. Emma thought about a man who had spent 5 years building a mechanism to dismantle something, who had used the trust of a person he had helped to build as the foundation of a plan to destroy him, and whose first thought upon being caught was not of the years of work or the legal consequence, but of the specific person who had been in the company for 3 weeks. She thought about what that meant. It meant he had been watching her. From the moment she arrived, or possibly from the moment Adrian had made the hospital payment, which had not been anonymous to everyone, and which Calloway, with his comprehensive knowledge of Adrian's financial habits, might well have noticed. She had been on Calloway's radar before she was on anyone else's. The phone call with the offer had not been a reactive measure. It had been planned. "He knew I was going to find it," Emma said. "I think," Tom Garrett said carefully, "that he believed you might, and he made the calculation that an offer was worth trying before a more aggressive intervention." He paused. "Which means he also calculated what it would take to stop you if the offer didn't work." Emma thought about the message on her phone, the service corridor, Victoria at her desk. "The planted files," she said. "That wasn't Webb's idea." "No," Sandra said. "We believe that was a contingency that Calloway had prepared well in advance. If the federal filing was initiated, the planted files were the fallback create enough ambiguity about Emma's role that her documentation becomes questionable." Emma sat with this for a moment. A man she had never met. A man who had spent years building a plan to use Adrian Moretti's own company against him, and who had at some point in the last 3 weeks added Emma Carter to his list of problems to solve. She felt the weight of that. She let herself feel it because pretending it wasn't there would have been a lie, and she did not lie to herself about things that mattered. Then she put it away. "What do you need from me now?" she said. Tom Garrett almost smiled. "A few more hours of your time. And then honestly, we need you to go somewhere and rest, because you've been running at a pace that—" "I'll rest when it's finished," Emma said. He nodded. He had the expression of a person who recognizes an argument they are not going to win. They worked through the afternoon. At 2:15, Adrian came into the conference room. He looked at the table full of documents and the empty coffee cups, and Emma at the center of it, and something moved across his face that he didn't contain quickly enough. "Can I have a few minutes?" he said to Tom and Sandra. They gathered themselves efficiently and left. Adrian sat down across from Emma. She waited. "It's done," he said. "The primary legal framework is in place. Webb is cooperating in exchange for reduced charges. Victoria is cooperating. Calloway is not cooperating, but Calloway doesn't need to cooperate. The documentation is sufficient." "Good," Emma said. "The company is going to go through a significant restructuring. he said. The subsidiaries that were used in the scheme need to be comprehensively audited. There will be internal reviews of every personnel decision Callaway influenced over the past decade. He paused. It's going to take a long time, and it's going to be difficult. I know, Emma said. I'd like you to lead the internal review team, he said. Emma looked at him. That's a significant position, she said. You're a significant person, he said, and you've already done most of the work. She thought about it. She thought about what it would mean, the scope of it, the visibility, the fact that it would require her to spend the next year inside a process that had already consumed 3 weeks of her life and several nights of her father's sleep, and a level of personal risk she had not signed up for when she answered a job listing. I have conditions, she said. Tell me, he said. Full authority to conduct the review without interference. That means no one above me in the hierarchy has the ability to limit what I examine or who I speak to, including you. Agreed, he said. The review results go to the board and to the federal investigators simultaneously. Not to you first. He looked at her steadily. Agreed. And I want a formal employment agreement that doesn't require me to sign anything that limits my ability to report what I find to external authorities. You'll have it, he said. I'll have legal draft it this week. Emma nodded. Then yes, she said. I'll lead the review. He looked at her. Emma, he said, and then stopped, started again. I need to say something that I don't know how to say correctly. She waited. I have spent a very long time, he said slowly, in a world where the people around me were there because of what I had, what I controlled, what I could do for them or do to them. I built walls because I understood that was the reality, and I preferred walls to the alternative. He paused. And then I met a woman with a mop and a business degree who sat across from me in the middle of the night and told me I looked like someone who had lost everything, and she wasn't wrong, and she wasn't afraid of me, and she didn't want anything from me except... He stopped again. You never wanted anything from me. I wanted a job, Emma said. You could have had a much easier job, he said. You could have taken the money and disappeared. You could have ignored what you found. You could have taken Callaway's offer. At every point where taking something from me would have been the easier path, you didn't take it. I told you before, Emma said. I take what I need. I don't take what I don't. What do you need? He said. And it was not a CEO asking an employee. It was a man asking a question he had never asked anyone directly, in a tone that made clear the answer mattered to him in a way that was not professional. Emma looked at him. She thought about her father's voice through the wall. She thought about the notebook with the medical bills and the column of numbers and the months of choosing between things she needed and things she could do without. She thought about 47 applications and 4 interviews and every door that had not opened, and the particular shape of resilience that grows from knowing that the world will not simply give you what you deserve and choosing to reach for it anyway. She thought about a night in an executive lounge with a man who had looked like someone who lost everything, and who had spoken to her like she was a person and not a function. I need to know that the work I do here means something real, she said. I need to know that when I find something that's wrong, telling the truth about it is safe. I need to know that I am here because of what I can do, not because of what happened between us, not because of the night at Blackwood Tower, not because of anything except competence and integrity. You are, he said. I need to hear you say it clearly, she said. You are here, he said, because you are the most competent and most honest person I have encountered in a professional context in over 20 years. What happened between us before you were employed here has nothing to do with why you are employed here, and it has nothing to do with this conversation. Emma nodded. Good, she said. Then after a moment, that said. He looked at her. What happened between us before I was employed here is not nothing, she said. It's just separate. And I think we both know it's separate, and we've been treating it as though pretending it doesn't exist is the same as being professional about it, and I don't think those are the same thing. The room held what she had said. Adrian looked at her with the kind of attention that was not performing attention. "No," he said quietly. "They're not the same thing." "So," Emma said, "when this is done, when the review is finished, and the legal process has run its course, and I'm no longer in a position where my professional relationship with you determines my father's stability and my ability to do the work I need to do." "Yes," he said. She blinked. "I haven't finished the sentence." "I know," he said. "The answer is still yes." She looked at him. Something in her chest moved, not dramatically, not in the way she might have expected if she had been the kind of person who expected things dramatically, quietly, with the specific quality of something that had been true for a while becoming acknowledged. "You are very certain for someone who doesn't have all the information yet," she said. "I've had the important information since the night you told me about recording your father's voice," he said. "Everything after that has been additional confirmation." Emma looked at the table full of documents. She looked at the empty coffee cups. She looked at the window beyond Adrian, beyond which the city was doing its ordinary afternoon business of moving and producing and demanding and not caring about any of the particular human things happening on this floor of this building. "Finish this first," she said. "All of it, properly." "Agreed," he said. She stood up. "My father is going to want to meet you," she said. "He has strong opinions about people. He will not be polite about his assessment." "I'll manage," Adrian said. "You think you will," Emma said. "He's a former high school history teacher. He has been evaluating people's character for 40 years, and he has a very low tolerance for performance." Adrian looked at her steadily. "I'm not going to perform." She thought about that. About what she had seen from him over the past 3 weeks, the moments where the control slipped, where the human beneath the reputation showed up fully and without apology. The window he stood at, the way he had asked about her father, the way he had said what I want to do and what I'm going to do are different things and then done the harder one. "I know," she said. She walked toward the door. Behind her, Adrian said, "Emma." She turned. "Thank you," he said, "for not taking the money." She held his gaze for a moment. "Thank you," she said, "for being worth not taking it." She opened the door and walked out. In the corridor, Sandra Park was waiting with a final question about the documentation timeline. Emma answered it. Then Tom Garrett had a follow-up about one of the subsidiary accounts. She answered that too. She answered 3 more questions from 2 different people, and then she took the elevator down to the lobby and stood on the sidewalk in the afternoon air. She called her father. He answered on the second ring. "Emma," he said, "when are you coming?" "Soon," she said. "Today." "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," he said. "The people here are very attentive and the lunch was acceptable. I've been thinking about what you told me this morning. And I think," her father said with the deliberate pacing of someone who has been organizing a thought for several hours, "that you have spent a long time making yourself small enough to fit through doors that were not built for you. I think it might be time to stop doing that." Emma closed her eyes for a moment. "Yeah, Dad," she said. "I think you might be right." "Come home soon," he said. "I'm on my way," she said. She put her phone in her pocket and stood for another moment on the sidewalk. The city moved around her. It did not care about her. It did not notice her. That was all right. She noticed herself. She started walking. Behind her in the building she had just left, the processes were running legal, federal, financial. People were doing their work. Things were being documented and submitted and confirmed. The machinery of consequence was in motion, and it would continue in motion without her for the next several hours. She had done what she came to do. She had done more than what she came to do. In fact, she had come to do a job and had ended up doing something considerably larger. She had not planned for that. She had not chosen it exactly. She had just kept choosing to do the next right thing, and the next right thing, and the next right thing, until the accumulation of those choices had become something she could look back at and recognize as a shape. It was not the shape she had imagined her life taking. It was, she thought, walking toward the subway, a better one. Her father's voice in her ear. The sensation of having carried something heavy and set it down in the right place. The specific feeling of having been afraid and having done it anyway and being still standing on the other side. She was still standing. That, Emma Carter thought as she pushed through the turnstile and headed for the train, was enough. For today, that was everything. The federal warrants executed at dawn. Emma knew because Sandra Park called her at 6:47 minutes after Adrian's text, while she was still standing in the kitchen, listening to her father describe the inadequacy of the morning news coverage. She stepped into the hallway and answered, and Sandra's voice was the clipped, focused version, the version that meant things were moving and moving fast. 7 arrests in the first wave, Sandra said. 4 members of Webb's external network, 2 financial intermediaries connected to the Delaware holding structure, and 1 individual who we believe made the call to your phone 3 days ago. Emma leaned against the wall. The voice, she said. Name is Paul Carver, 44 years old. He's worked adjacent to Gerald Moretti's private interests for the better part of a decade. He'll be processed this morning. A pause. Emma, the immediate threat picture has changed significantly. We're not saying it's over, there are threads still being followed. But the primary operational risk to you and your father is substantially reduced as of this morning. Emma breathed. Not the managed breathing she had been doing for the past 4 days, the kind that was also work. This was just breathing. The ordinary kind. Thank you, Sandra, she said. Thank you, Sandra said and meant it and hung up. Emma stood in the hallway for a moment. Then she went back into the kitchen and told her father that the situation at work was resolving and that they would be able to go home within the next day or 2. Her father looked at her over his coffee cup, the coffee he had made himself, because he had informed the health aide that morning. He had been making his own coffee since 1974 and did not require assistance, and said, "Good, their pillows are terrible." Emma sat down across from him. "Dad," she said. He looked at her. "I found something bad at work," she said. "Something real. And I reported it. And it's being handled now." She put her hands flat on the table. "I need you to know that I did it because it was right. Not because I had to. Not because someone told me to. Because it was right." Her father looked at her for a long moment. "I know why you did it," he said. "I raised you." Emma felt the back of her throat tighten. "You did," she said. He reached across this table and put his hand over hers. His hand was thinner than it used to be. She was always aware of this. The ongoing subtraction of his physical mass, the way illness rearranges a person over time. But the pressure of it was the same. The certainty of it. "Go to work," he said. "I'll be here when you get back." She went. The office was different that morning in ways both visible and not. The visible ones, 2 additional security personnel in the lobby, a revised sign-in protocol, the particular alert quality of people who work in a building where something significant has happened and are processing what that means for the ordinary architecture of their days. The not visible ones, the quality of the silence in the analysis division, which was the silence of people who had decided collectively to work harder than usual, because working hard was the thing available to them when everything else felt uncertain. Emma sat at her desk. She opened her computer. She started working. At 9:15, Adrian came down to the analysis division for the second time since she had started. The room did the same thing it had done before, the collective peripheral tracking the performance of focus. He stopped at her desk. "My office," he said. "When you're ready." She looked up at him. "I'm ready now," she said. They went up together. The elevator was empty again. Neither of them spoke during the ride, but the silence was different from the silences that had preceded it. It was the silence of 2 people who have been through something together and are now standing on the other side of it, trying to locate themselves in the new terrain. In his office, he didn't sit behind his desk. He sat in one of the chairs beside the window, the less formal positioning, the one that said, "This is not a meeting." She sat in the chair across from it. "Sandra briefed me at 7, he said. "Me too," Emma said. 7 arrests. Carver in custody. Gerald's cooperation was critical to the speed of it. He paused. My lawyers spoke to the federal office this morning. Gerald's cooperation agreement will be formalized by end of week. He'll serve time. Not as much as Webb, but time. Emma nodded. How are you? She said. He looked at her. Honest answer, he said. Always, she said. I don't know yet, he said. There's a version of this that I haven't processed because there hasn't been time to process it. The operational version, I can handle that. The part about my uncle, the part about what he built and why he built it, and what it means about the years I thought I understood. He stopped. That's going to take longer. That's allowed, Emma said. Taking longer is allowed. He looked at her with the unguarded expression, the one that had no professional category. You said something to me once, he said, on the night we met. You said the most dangerous thing in the world is wanting something you might not get. But that's just being alive. Emma remembered. She hadn't known he had held on to it. I remember, she said. I've been thinking about that for 3 months, he said. Since the morning you walked into this building and finished signing your name at the reception desk and didn't look back at me. He paused. I have wanted things before. I have wanted deals and outcomes and positions and the satisfaction of winning a long game. I know what that wanting feels like, and I know how to manage it. He looked at her steadily. This is different. Emma held his gaze. What is it? She said. In the words you found. He was quiet for a moment. You are the first person in 20 years, he said, who has been entirely honest with me. Not strategically honest. Not honest because it served a purpose. Honest because that's how you are. And I find that I have built my entire adult life in a world where that doesn't exist, and now that I know it exists, I cannot make myself stop wanting to be near it. He paused. Near you. Emma looked at him for a long moment. That's better than the last attempt, she said. I know, he said. I practiced. She felt something shift in her chest. Not the cold clarity, not the managed breathing, not the professional focus she had been running on for days. Something warmer. Something that had been waiting for the operational crisis to end so it could take up the space it had been quietly occupying. I'm not going to be managed, she said. I need you to understand that completely. Not now, and not in 3 years, and not when it would be more convenient for you if I made a different decision. I make my own decisions, about my work, about my life, about what I accept and what I don't. I know, he said. I'm not an asset, she said. I'm not a symbol. I'm not the woman who changed you like a line in a story. I'm a person with a sick father and a notebook full of numbers and a business degree I worked very hard for, and opinions about things that you are not always going to agree with. I know, he said again, and I need you to know that when I say something you don't want to hear, and I will regularly, because that is how I operate, I need to be able to say it without it becoming something else, without it being managed or redirected. Emma, he said. She stopped. I know, he said for the 3rd time. But differently. Not as an agreement to terms, as something more complete. I know all of that, and I'm not asking you to be anything other than exactly who you are. I am asking you very badly, apparently, because I am considerably better at running a company than at this, whether who you are has room for me in it. The room was very quiet. Emma looked at him. She thought about the night that had started this, about a cleaning cart and a man sitting in the dark, and a conversation that shouldn't have happened, and a morning she had woken up in a place she didn't recognize. She thought about 47 job applications and 4 interviews, and the particular stubbornness of a person who keeps going when the reasonable response would be to stop. She thought about her father's voice on the recordings she made on her phone. She thought about what it meant to stand in front of someone powerful and not be afraid of them. She thought about what it meant to choose. Yes, she said. It does. He looked at her. That's all, he said. That's everything, she said. Something in his face changed, not dramatically, just settled. The way a room settles when the windows are finally closed and the weather outside stops mattering. He said, okay. She said, okay. And that was the conversation. Not a declaration, not a scene. Just two people in an office on a Wednesday morning being honest with each other, which was the only way either of them had ever been able to do anything that mattered. Emma stood up. "I have work to do," she said. "So do I," he said. "Adrian." He looked at her. "Your brother," she said. "The voice you can't hear anymore. You should record the people you still have, while you still have them." She paused. "Your uncle, maybe before everything is formally concluded. Whatever he did, he's still someone whose voice you knew." He was very still. "That's—" He stopped. "Complicated," she said. "I know. Do it anyway." She walked out. She went back downstairs and sat at her desk and opened her work and felt fully and without qualification like someone who was exactly where they were supposed to be. The weeks that followed moved with the particular rhythm of aftermath, not slow, but layered each day, containing both the forward motion of ordinary work and the ongoing process of an investigation that was still unspooling its farthest threads. Sandra's team was thorough, and they were fast, and they were present enough in the building during those weeks that Emma began to recognize the agents by their coffee orders and the specific quality of focus they brought to whatever room they entered. Marcus Webb entered a formal guilty plea on a Thursday morning. Emma learned about it from Sandra by text at 8 a.m. while she was on the subway. She read the message and looked up at the people around her, the morning commuters, the nurses, and the delivery workers, and the construction workers, and the ordinary population of a city that keeps moving, and she thought nobody in this car knows that something just concluded. Nobody here was watching. The city doesn't pause for the things that matter to you. It just keeps going. She got off at her stop and went to work. Victoria Hale's cooperation agreement was finalized 10 days after Webb's plea. Emma had not seen Victoria since the day she had walked out of the analysis division with Reese and the federal agent. She didn't expect to see her again. She found when she examined what she felt about Victoria that it was not what she might have expected. Not anger, not satisfaction, not even relief. It was something closer to the complicated understanding she had arrived at regarding Gerald. People made decisions from inside circumstances that looked different from the outside. That didn't make the decisions right. It made them human. Both things could be true simultaneously. Gerald Moretti's cooperation agreement was formally concluded on a Friday. Adrian told her about it that evening. They had developed over the weeks of aftermath the habit of talking at the end of the day, sometimes in his office, sometimes by phone once in a while over coffee at the place near the subway entrance that made coffee strong enough to be useful and didn't play music loud enough to make conversation difficult. These conversations were not exclusively personal. They were frequently about work, about the company's structural changes in the wake of what had happened, about the employees who had been affected, about the programs that needed to be put in place to ensure that what Webb had done could not happen again in the same way. Emma had opinions about all of it. Adrian listened to them. This was, she had come to understand, not a small thing. It was perhaps the least small thing about him. "Gerald asked about you," Adrian said on the Friday evening, the day the agreement concluded. Emma looked at him. "What did he ask?" "He asked if you were all right." A pause. "I told him you were. He said—" Adrian stopped, considered. "He said he was glad the company had someone like you, that he had underestimated what that meant." Emma thought about a 71-year-old man in a secure location processing what his life had added up to. She thought about the word underestimated and everything it contained. "I hope he finds some peace," she said. Genuinely. Adrian looked at her. After everything, she said. "Peace doesn't excuse what people do, but its absence doesn't punish them either. It just extends the damage." She paused. "I don't want to extend damage. I want things to get better." He looked at her for a long moment. "You are," he said quietly, "a genuinely remarkable person." "I know," she said, not with arrogance, just with the simple, settled knowledge of someone who has done hard things and knows what they're made of. He almost smiled. "Good," 6 weeks after the federal warrants had executed, Emma sat in a conference room with Adrian Sandra Park, the company's restructured legal team, and 2 board members, presenting a comprehensive analysis of the vulnerabilities in the company's financial reporting systems that had allowed Webb's scheme to function. She had spent 3 weeks building it. It was 42 pages, detailed and specific, and structured in the plain, precise language she brought to everything. She walked them through it for 90 minutes. She answered every question. She made 2 recommendations that the board found uncomfortable and explained when they pushed back exactly why the discomfort was the point. When it was over, Sandra shook her hand and said, "You should consult for the federal office." "I have a job," Emma said. Sandra looked at Adrian. Adrian looked at Emma. "She does," he said. 2 days after the board presentation, Emma was formally promoted. Not to the position she had been hired into, to the position above it, with the title and the salary and the authority that went with it. Adrian made the announcement internally without ceremony, which was the right way to do it. Emma received 17 emails of congratulation, 9 of which were genuine, and 8 of which were from people recalibrating their assessment of her, now that her position was official. She could tell the difference. She answered all 17 with equal professionalism. She called her father when she left the office that evening and told him. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Emma, do you remember what I told you when you graduated? What I said at dinner?" She remembered. "You said the world will underestimate you your entire life. Let it. Just keep going." "Yes," he said. "Did that turn out to be accurate?" "It turned out to be accurate," she said. "Good," he said. "Come home for dinner. I made soup." She went home for dinner. Her father had made soup that was considerably better than the quality of the recipe he claimed to be following, which was his particular form of intellectual dishonesty, and which she had loved her entire life. They ate at the kitchen table in their own apartment. They had moved back 2 weeks after the arrests, their own space, their own pillows, their own coffee, and her father talked about the news, and she listened, and the evening moved at the pace of ordinary things. Later, washing the dishes, she thought about all the things that had changed. The company was different. Not in its surface, the lobby still looked the same. The elevator still rattled at the 14th floor, but in its structure. The vulnerabilities were being addressed. The reporting systems were being rebuilt. 3 employees who had been quietly disadvantaged under Webb's oversight had been reinstated with back pay and formal acknowledgement of what had been done to them. Emma had advocated for this directly in a meeting where 2 board members had suggested that the matter could be handled more quietly. She had explained in her plainest language why quietly was the wrong choice and why the people most affected deserved something visible and real. Adrian had backed her without hesitation. That had meant something. It still meant something. She thought about what he had said in his office on the morning after the warrants, about wanting to be in the vicinity of her choices. She had told him it wasn't entirely clear, and he had told her to work on it, and he had worked on it consistently in the weeks that followed, not in declarations, but in behavior in the specific and daily business of treating her as the person she was, rather than the person it might have been easier for him to have her be. She had watched him do this. She had watched him do it on the days it required effort, and on the days it clearly did not, and on the specific difficult day, 3 weeks after the arrests, when a board member had made a comment about Emma's background. Not maliciously, just carelessly. The reflexive underestimation of a man who had been in rooms full of other men like him for 40 years, and Adrian had corrected it in public in the meeting without making it a production. Just corrected it, clearly, and moved on. The board member had not made a similar comment since. Emma had not mentioned it to Adrian. He had not mentioned it to her. It had simply happened, and they had both registered it and moved forward, which was she had come to understand how things worked between them. Action rather than narration. The thing itself rather than the announcement of it. She was drying the last dish when her phone lit up. "Adrian," she answered. "Your father's soup," he said. "Is it as good as you've described it?" She stopped. I've never described it to you, she said. You described it once, 3 weeks ago. You said he makes soup that's better than it has any right to be given the recipe he claims to use. She stood in her kitchen with the dish towel in her hand and felt quietly and completely seen. It's exactly that good, she said. Invite me sometime, he said. My father will give you opinions about things, she said. Extensive opinions. About the news, about coffee, about the proper way to make soup. He won't know who you are and he won't care. Good, Adrian said. You say that now. I mean it now, he said. Emma, I want the ordinary version of things. With you. The soup and the opinions and the Tuesday evenings and whatever that looks like. He paused. I have spent my entire adult life building something large, and I have been so occupied with building it that I forgot to build anything small. Anything that was just mine. Just real. Emma leaned against the counter. You're describing a life, she said. Yes, he said. I'm describing a life, with you in it. Another pause. If that's something you want. She thought about it honestly. Not because she didn't know the answer, but because she had promised herself a long time ago, in a series of subway rides and late nights and difficult mornings, that she would always be honest with herself before she was honest with anyone else. She knew the answer. She had known it for a while. Yes, she said. It's something I want. Okay, he said. Adrian. Yes. Start with the soup, she said. Sunday. Come for dinner Sunday. My father will give you opinions, and the soup will be better than the recipe, and we'll see how you do with ordinary. A pause. I'll be there, he said. Good night, she said. Good night, Emma. She put the phone down. She stood in the kitchen of her own apartment and listened to her father moving in the other room, the particular cadence of him settling in for the evening, the television at the volume he preferred, the sound of a man doing what he always did, and being alive while he did it. She thought about the night this had all started, about the cleaning cart and the darkness and the question, why aren't you afraid of me? She had said, because tonight you don't look like a dangerous man. You look like someone who lost everything. She had not known then that he had also been someone looking for something. Not an advantage, not a solution. Something real. Something that couldn't be bought or managed or controlled. She had not known that she was looking for the same thing, had been looking for it through every closed door, and every rejection letter, and every night shift, and every careful column of numbers in a notebook. She turned off the kitchen light. She went to check on her father. He was in his chair with the television on, not watching it exactly but present to it in the way he had always been present to the world. Not always engaged, but always there, reliable as weather. Good phone call, he said without looking away from the screen. Yes, she said. Good. He reached for the remote and turned the volume down slightly. Emma. Dad. You did something hard, he said. You did it the right way. And you didn't let them make you into something smaller than you are. He looked at her now. I want you to know that I know that. I see it. Emma stood in the doorway. She felt in that moment the full weight of everything, not as burden, but as substance. The weight of what she had come through, what she had found, what she had refused to surrender, what she had chosen again and again in the moments when choosing something else would have been easier. She had been invisible for years. She had always known what she was capable of. The world had taken its time catching up. I know you see it, Dad, she said. That's always been enough. She kissed the top of his head. She went to bed. And for the first time, in as long as she could remember, she fell asleep without a notebook open, without a column of numbers running in the back of her mind, without the particular vigilance of a person who has learned to stay ready for whatever comes next. She slept fully and completely in the life she had built herself. Nobody had given it to her. Nobody had saved her into it. She had found what was wrong. She had said it out loud. She had held the evidence when people tried to take it, and stood in the room when they wanted her gone, and refused every offer designed to make her smaller. She had done all of it while taking care of her father, and doing her job, and being at every point exactly who she was. A poor janitor who walked into a billionaire's world with nothing but a mop and the kind of honesty that money had never been able to manufacture and power had never been able to produce. And the most feared man in New York City had looked at her across a dark room at 1 a.m. and seen something he didn't have a category for. And she had looked back at him without flinching. Because she never had. Because that was who Emma Carter was. Had always been. Would always be the woman who looked directly at the things in front of her and called them what they were. And kept going. Not because someone told her to. Not because the outcome was guaranteed, but because that was the only way she knew how to live. And it had turned out to be enough. It had turned out to be everything.